revenue neutral rate hearing that's to begin at 6 p.m. So we will begin that hearing and that will close at 6:15. So we'll consider this meeting started. At this point, if anybody has any questions or anybody wants to review anything further, we sure can.
We would probably want to ask for public comment since it's the hearing.
Sure, yeah. That as well. So if there's anybody here tonight, I don't know, do we have the opportunity from
Yeah, it's a public
From
hearing, so.
right, but what I'm saying is from a live stream opportunity. No, okay,
It's just for me.
okay, perfect. Well, anybody here, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask at this point.
The revenue neutral thing's rather new, second year, but we did find out after the agenda was already published that if you guys want to next year, we can shorten the time instead of having 30 minutes. You could open both hearings at the same time. And then, yeah,
Or open one, and as soon as it's done, just close it. and
so
open
if
the next.
nobody comments or wants, and then you close it and then open the other instead of having it designated 30 minutes. So if we remember that a year from now.
I will try my very hardest to remember.
After the next 27 minutes, you worry.
I will worry.
Well, one other different thing this year is we do have to vote by roll call for the revenue hearing, revenue neutral hearing as well. So if there aren't any questions from the board or from the public, then we can proceed and then we can wait our time out and start the next one at 6:15. So I don't want to do that if there's questions. Okay, well, if no questions, then I recommend, I'm going to make the following recommended motion. I move to give final approval to the USD 379 22-23 revenue neutral rate.
And adopt, you need to adopt resolution 9/12/22A, right? Yeah.
Sure. In addition to that, we will adopt resolution number 9/12/22 B.
It's A now.
It's A now.
Yes.
Okay. Bring that to A. Do you have a motion on the table?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Now we do have to vote by roll call. So any further questions before we vote?
I do have a question. As I have been on the board, I've never voted by roll call. At this board, do we vote by yes or aye or yay?
A yes or no, will be fine.
Thank you. Honest.
Andy Ald,
Yes.
Debbie Brown? Yes. Jason Bernstein,
Yes.
Jeff Knizzo,
Yes.
April Pearson? Yes. Linda Schlichter?
Yes.
Paige Tadigan? Yes. Motion carries 7-0. Wait until 6:15.
The form came from KSD. Just says certified.
Certified.
Yes, who do you want to sign this thing?
The roll call vote, who signs that? Says certified.
Clerk.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I actually thought about that.
There's some.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
My daughter was confused by the selections this week.
What is,
I don't.
They have different selections.
everyone, other than chocolate chip? Is the only
Okay.
thing.
Okay. Do they announce those on social media?
Yeah, on their side.
On the website? Okay.
I think they have something that goes out too, because my daughter gets it. She,
Oh, I
like,
think,
has
yeah,
to
I think so,
announce every week that
What the choices are.
Cream pie, moon cake,
Oh,
turkey
Andy's
cake,
got it saved as a bookmark.
minion confetti, and yellow sugar.
they had the.
They are pretty delicious.
One that was so rich that I just like not even a quarter of it.
I like to like.
Elizabeth said, take it with you, so it's what's left over, have some, it's my favorite cake.
What kind is it?
It's It's really good. I was instructed to not bring anything.
Okay. I'll do my job. If
I
I'll
was
be-
gonna say.
Seven minutes is a long time.
Yeah, it's good. Pasta. And then like the president's most of town. Not, I mean, there's a little bit. Like, it will be kind of like. 10 hours. But, yeah. Inches go a long way, so some later meetings. So.
She came out and we're working with these, and so she asked me. Oh, no, she's still. She knows better. Like Cal, on the other hand, he'll stand there right next to me. So I'm sort of like, and then he'll go back anyway.
We got next.
I do it first. I'm sorry, I went through that.
Hopefully, I'll get everything set up. Especially the individual. is right now, I guess. At 100%. I got to see it. I just.
Right here. Yeah, she's always has a little cowlick on her earboard.
Yeah, we gotta put them on the plane.
3 months.
Rather than take too long.
Make sure we didn't-
Everybody's. walking up top of the- More space. Week west, week after next, and then- and it's a week, 10 days before we start going South Central. Yeah. Colby was getting under irrigation. So lane, we've got to drive on the side of the lane. So it's got tight.
I don't have zero.
They ain't gonna- These guys up there. Double row. Try to get down the moisture. The guy we're on. Takes. He's like this. Last year or so. Had a better chance of it. It's so dry.
I think so, because I was on my track. Thank you very much.
NPC. Yeah.
Okay, 6:15, so we will close the revenue neutral rate hearing and we will officially open the budget hearing at 6:15. That will close at 6:30 as well, but at this time we'll take comments or questions from the board or the public. Also, you're from the 15th. Yes, thank
I'd like the school board to tell me what they want me to tell the students when I teach this tomorrow.
Great. This particular piece,
Yes,
when you teach it tomorrow.
yeah, like I'm really well prepared right now.
Well, so the revenue neutral rates is newer with the Senate bill. What's the Senate bill number? Get it right. Actually, it's House Bill. It was last year, but House Bill 2239. And basically changed some of the process and procedures that we have to adhere to. And it does require a roll call vote of board members, which is unlike anything before. So that's new. Share that with them.
Is this going to be, in your opinion, the way things are going to happen in the future?
Unless it's
Unless
changed
the
legislatively.
definitions, yeah. And it affects public entities, not just school boards. I mean, the city and the county have to do revenue neutral rate hearings too.
Right, the mill levy is being taught this week,
Okay.
so this fits in very well. It's just a matter of what you want me to emphasize or de-emphasize.
If you need a guest speaker, I'd be happy to come,
Really?
Hey, there you go.
depending on.
Man.
Guys are not too prepared.
My students are gonna
There it is.
flip out.
I think that was a guest teacher, not guest speaker.
Rearrangement of assignment.
You betcha there is. I'll get in touch with you.
Yeah, just let me know.
I think, Ms. Coleman, something that before I came on the board a couple years ago, it's interesting to me how all of the pieces come together.
Mhm.
And it isn't just, this is how much tax money you get. The state has very clear requirements of where that money has to go and very clear requirements of what each specific fund can be used for. And so I think that there's a misconception among our taxpayers that we just have free reign of every dollar that comes in the door. And that isn't the case. We have a lot of stipulations where that can go, what it can be used for, and how that money is collected and then redistributed to the needs of the district.
How many mills go to each fund, you know, right, to your point.
I've been in the county clerk's office twice now, 3 times,
Mhm.
and they said they're getting a lot of phone calls,
About the revenue
questionings
neutral
and
rate.
everything like that. And so when they heard I might be teaching this, they were willing to help me understand it and everything, but I just kind of needed some guidance with you guys were thinking. But if I got a guest speaker.
Got a niece in the hole there, Ms. Coleman.
Helpful to understand the different funds. where you
Are you
break up.
teaching it about all mills? Or are you teaching it specifically about school mills?
Well, I figured he was gonna have it in the newspaper, the radio was gonna have it, and the students might be asking the questions
Right.
on that. And so at that point, the panic really hit. Otherwise, I usually just do regular bills.
You hide panic very well. I remember.
Yes. Been trained very well. We'll muddle through this.
It's not an easy thing to understand, so it takes some time. So the fact that you're starting now with students is a really cool thing.
Mhm.
So thank you.
They could have come down here and really too. Not
Sat in silence for.
Actually,
They could have asked questions.
Well, but in really truly, the time that would have probably been a really good learning experience was when the presentation of the budget happened
Last month.
last month. So that's,
But
So
they
we-
could go back
They
and
could go
watch
back
it
and
now.
watch the
they
recording.
could, they could.
You could show me, I could do that for extra credit, couldn't I?
I could always use extra credit in this one class. Listen to me right now.
We did, with her class. We did. I was like.
Did you make your cookies?
No, no, we all know that isn't.
We debated a lot. She liked.
I don't know if you saw that look, she just gave me.
Got access to all that.
I'm just watching those right now. So she doesn't have.
Oh.
How are y'all liking your new camera set? Is it working pretty good?
I think so. I think it's been well received, mostly. I think sometimes it's a little slow to catch the sound of the person talking, so maybe a little bit.
It needs to be
Better
closer
option
to
than
you.
than what's out there before.
What's that?
It needs to be closer to you.
I think there's like over 100 views when I went on the last meeting. I just was interested to see if anybody was using it. Yeah.
I don't think hardly many people watched it while it was live, but they
Live,
must have
but
went back
Gone back to watch
Yeah.
it.
when they could.
That's great. That's what they're for.
So be careful, it does catch like eye rolls and stuff. like
Oh,
that.
okay.
But y'all did great at last time, so,
You mean adding them?
you know, like when the camera's on you and someone says something, if you go. "Ah," like that, everyone will see it.
Can't make them noise.
Oh, great. Okay, that concludes our budget hearing. So we will move on to the regular board meeting to begin at 6:30 PM. First item on the agenda is to call the meeting to order. Second item is to move to the agenda. I do want to make a motion to amend the agenda to add executive session to discuss student matters. And that would come between the last business discussion item and before personnel. It's on the table. Second. The motion is second. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Welcome to all of our guests who were here to start and have been coming in since 6 o'clock. So thanks for being here. And those of you also too listening on Zoom. Receive communications. Does anybody have anything they want to share? It's not. All right, we'll move on to citizens open
Can I add
forum.
something?
Yes.
I know
before we
I'm
move-
not,
Yes.
but this one was super positive and I thought it was a really neat, positive message. It was from our Clay Center High School went to compete in volleyball match not long ago. I received an email from their school district superintendent saying, I just wanted to reach out to you and tell you how proud I am of your students that came over to our volleyball match last night. I was told they came to support your former student. I was so inspired by this display of true friendship to support a friend that has been through more than any young person should ever go through in their lifetime. I can only hope that she, the student, was as touched by their generosity as we were as bystanders. Lastly, our future is in great hands. If all will learn from your students on how to treat others. They are truly first-class people. So I thought that was very neat and positive response from them.
Okay, anybody else? All right, we'll move on then to citizens open forum. We do have one individual that would like to present this evening. I will go ahead and read the comments. You guys have heard them before, but I'll read them anyway. We do appreciate patrons taking time to talk to us about our policies and procedures. We set aside this time every meeting to hear from the public. Your comments should be directed towards board policy or the procedures our administrators established to carry out those policies.
This is not an appropriate time or place for patrons to make comments of a personal nature about any district employee or student. Persons making comments which violate the privacy rights of district employees and students will be asked to stop speaking or cease their remarks. If a patron or parent has a concern with one or more employees, the board person speaking will be. I'm sorry, just lost my- Follow up at a future meeting. Thank you.
Can I, am I allowed to
You
finish?
you go ahead and finish.
Okay, persons speaking will be allowed 3 minutes each to express the opinions. In cases where a large number of patrons have similar opinions, a single speaker should be chosen to represent the larger group. Thank you for taking your time to discuss district business with the board.
Okay, so we have Dan Ballman, who would like to present this evening. Wherever. Wherever I'm thinking. Yes.
Well, I want to start, this is my third meeting in a row, I guess, and this is the second I get to present a check to you guys. Last month, we presented you with a check for $750,000 from the Tiger Legacy campaign towards the multipurpose stadium complex. And this month, that's a check for $200,000, which is basically completing the campaign. If you recall, when we started this process, we started with a $750,000 goal. With inflation hitting and that sort of thing, we said, let's do more. And everyone was optimistic. Personally, I was just like, are you kidding me? And but this community stepped up, and again, $950,000 from the campaign, from the community in 23 weeks. April 4th is when we basically kicked off the campaign, and this has been, I don't know, the speed at which this campaign went, trying to get into a certain area where we could get some of these, get rid of the inflation part of it, but also make sure we can get bids in before prices are up, when the seasons are right, all that sort of thing. A lot of it went into it. And that is a fast campaign. I've been involved with things that are, years long efforts and collecting for years afterwards. And the fact that this community can raise almost $1 million in 23 weeks says a ton about the community. The campaign will continue in a way. So as of that check, campaign is called a success, and the campaign officially is complete. So the committee is going to be done or dissolved, whatever. I'm done with this part of it. And basically, we'll be doing match day on Thursday, CCCIF's match day. We will have a thing in there because, as was in our promotional materials, anything above and beyond the $950,000 goal would go to some of the extras that could be done with extra money, like a grand entrance, kind of producing an atmosphere for first impressions when people come in, improved lighting, landscaping, a larger press box, improved signage and aesthetics throughout the complex, and then upgraded track equipment is something that was a need. So anything that's above and beyond that 950 will go towards one of these, and these have been publicized since the start. I wrote myself some notes so I wouldn't forget, since this is my last presentation, but it's important to thank the community because, again, stepping up like this to get almost $1 million from a wide variety of people. We've seen Marysville, we've seen Minneapolis put in new projects. Those were kind of funded mostly by one person. I mean, there was campaigns involved, but when one person can step up and do a big chunk, that's fantastic. But I think this is kind of cool too, when the entire community with all levels steps up and donates towards this in 23 weeks. I'll keep saying 23 weeks because that's insane. I think that just shows a lot about where this community is and what's next for you guys. I don't know. I'm excited to see. So the community needs to be thanked. The committee, the campaign committee, I want to thank them because they did so much for this. I know a lot of people, they know a lot of people, and it took just everyone knowing everyone and just having ideas throughout this to make this happen so quickly. And then the district office has been fantastic throughout this whole process, being able to work with everyone. When we said, well, what about this? Where's this connected? Can you find this address? Little things like that. just little bitty things that we needed once in a while. It was awesome to just be able to have them as a resource. With the closing of this campaign, all that sort of background work kind of turns over to them, which is basically when checks come in, they have to process it. The actual legwork now isn't that bad. Everything else kind of lands on you guys now for bidding process and all that sort of stuff. So ultimately, I'm just really proud of you all in this community and what you've been able to accomplish through this campaign. I think it makes the community just look awesome. People will notice this sort of thing when they come in from afar for games or activities or whatever. They're going to see this. It's also going to be a marketing tool for you guys as you try to find, people looking for a place to live, to raise their families. This is going to be an element that's going to draw them, to this area. So that's all I have. I'm happy to be able to be part of this, and thank you for allowing me to do it. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you again. So,
Thank you.
but not next month.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing in, and thanks for your part that you played. So thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'm heading to homecoming activities, so I'll be taking off.
Okay.
See ya.
Good luck. Okay, so we will move on then to positive board comments. I'd like to share this one.
I'd like to thank Lisa last with her promotion of the job shadow program. I know there's some really excited kids about that program. I've got lots of questions from kids, so I'm excited about it, and I'm glad that she's generating that excitement. And also wanted to thank the principals for their reports. It's nice to see their perspective and their notes. So.
A couple new principals this year too, so it's nice to see some other comments in there too. So good. Got some good news to share from the
Yes,
from the state.
high school Tiger Band, we went to
competition.
the state fair today, and we performed both in the marching arena and in the just performance arena, and we got straight ones from all of our judges and some really awesome feedback from each of them about our performance and everything. All the kids had a really fun time, and they're really proud of the work they put in to be able to do that.
Awesome. Good job. Congratulations. That's great. Anybody else have anything to share?
I just wanted to thank all the staff for going above and beyond to start the school year. Yes, it's the classroom teachers with those meet the teacher nights at the elementary level and at the middle school level, helping those kids learn how to do lockers and those things that seem second nature to those teachers who have worked in those buildings for so long is a brand new thing for some kids. But also just thanks to all the staff for helping the kids have a great start to the year, whether that's a para learning new students or a bus driver having to do a new route or a custodian or helping new students feel welcomed in the buildings. All those things matter to help each kid. And I can't thank them enough for going above and beyond. So
I also want to thank our new directors, not our other directors, but our new directors. So, Craig and then Mike, who isn't here quite yet, but really good positive things that are happening out there. So thanks for your efforts. It's not easy to take you had some big shoes to fill. So appreciate you stepping up. Also a lot of work with the city that Mike is doing on the transportation side. He'll be here later this evening. Or he won't be here later, but we'll have a report later this evening, an agenda topic that we'll talk about. But I didn't think that we might be able to share some of the good things that they're working on with routes and the city and bus lanes and things of that nature that help kiddos get home a little bit quicker, even in the evening. So just a lot of positive things happening. So. Nothing else, then we'll move on to consent agenda. About anything in
Paying the financials is the floor perfect. Where is that work done at? Is that the middle school floor?
That's insurance claim. That's that tile.
That's that tile.
Yeah, that
they were finishing it right before school.
they closed, so that claim will be done, closed.
So that was all the tile that they didn't have the right, well, we had tile, but they didn't have tile. And then what is Heart Spring?
That's Telex.
We have a student that attends there from the co-op. We pay that
Is that a monthly thing or is that a
about 26,000 a month.
20, yeah, 25,
Close,
25,
yeah.
7?
a
Yeah,
month.
so that's a monthly deal with them, okay. And then the city of Clay Center, I assume that's electric and water. You know how much is water?
No, I mean, I can certainly look.
I'm just curious.
It all comes as one bill, but.
Oh, it all comes as one bill?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine, don't worry about it. Well, it's just $40,000, that's what that's,
Yeah, it's hefty. It's electricity.
and water.
And water.
Electricity was on those,
What's that?
electricity was up.
Yeah.
What's that on all?
Yeah, I noticed it on that one, so.
No waivers, is that just for students that can't afford to pay? Okay.
I noticed that we changed the graduation date for Wakefield. Yes, so that's. I don't know if you noticed that,
We
but
did,
that's
we went back to both administrations and said, make sure you talk to your people, talk to stakeholders, find out what they wanted to do. It's what they came up with.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
a motion and second to approve the consent agenda. Any further questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Next section is reports. The board member have anything to report on this month? If not, then we'll move on to the superintendent's report and let Mr. Nelson have the floor.
Yeah, pretty exciting time of year. Our enrollment should be up slightly again for the fourth year in a row, which is a very positive thing, because when you go back the previous 10 years prior to those 4 years, we were going in the wrong direction. And so we're not going up by a ton, but should be September 20th, as you know, our official day, but we should be up again for the fourth year in a row. So that's very, very exciting. Head count's gone up even more too. The head count in FTE are just a slightly different, as you guys know, FTE is what we're funded on. Head counts. How many students we're serving. Free and reduced lunch numbers has been the most unexpected number of the new year and the season. And as we have previously explained, a big part of that is the waiver that KSD submitted to the federal government to allow any Medicaid qualifying student to qualify as free, and that did pass. And so you'll notice that in our numbers, if you look at that 22, 23 by district column, the trend, kind of like what I shared last month, a big chunk of our families that qualified for reduced meals shifted into the free. And that's been the large chunk of the biggest change. And again, our hypothesis is the best example that we can provide is like health waiver, the state health insurance plan that families can qualify on based on income and some other factors, is at a certain level to qualify by income. Well, that's considered Medicaid. Well, the qualifying threshold for families to qualify for that health insurance plan didn't quite qualify them for our free lunch qualifications, but since it's Medicaid, they qualified for free, so it kicked them into the free category. And so and all our free and reduced percentage is up by 4%, 4.5% from last year or so. And so what does that mean? It means that, well, for one thing, it's important to notice, we budgeted higher. You know, we have in the open page, we have to estimate the number of free qualifying students that we think we're going to have. And for the last decade, we always shoot for about 410, 415, knowing we're going to come in under that. We bumped it to 450 this year, whereas it stands right now at 494. So we're about 44 kids higher. So just something to watch for. I don't know if that will kick us over our budget authority or not, but it could. So just an FYI, it's not a big deal. If it does, it just means once we hit September 20th and we watch the budget, if we don't have enough authority to spend that, we may have to republish. But nowhere in our wildest dreams did we think we'd have 494 pre-qualifying kids. It's a good problem. It's just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of that. And then if you look down at our buildings, the other factor to this is we will hit high density at risk in many of our buildings, and that's never happened. And again, it's a really positive thing, but it could kick that authority up even higher. So when a building hits between 35 and 50%, that's the first threshold of high density at risk. And then if a building gets to, and it's free only, not free and reduced. If a building hits over 50%, then that's another level of weightings that you receive. And so we could be, potentially pretty close in most of our buildings. That's just free,
right?
that's
Okay.
just free. So just something to watch for, and is what that means is that money comes into general fund and then it's a required transfer out of general fund into at risk. And so the authority that it might mess with would be at risk. And so we always try to overestimate and build in plenty of budget authority, but I think this is going to be a common thing across the entire state. So, and what that will allow us to do in the end is we'll be able to shift some more qualifying salaries over to at risk and out of general fund relevant.
I did have one question when you were explaining that. So as we can gather more students at any time, those students can qualify for free lunch at any time. Do we only get to count who qualified on September 20th though for our budget? Okay. I just didn't know if that adjusted and so, okay, that's fine.
They have to be in by the 20th.
Okay.
And
We were just
qualifying.
really close on a couple buildings and so I just didn't know. If you- That's okay. And we have to follow the rules, so.
For budgetary purposes, but
Sure.
they can still qualify throughout the school year.
Yeah, I just was
Yeah.
curious then for our own budgeting,
Sure.
if that adjusted when the new student or
And
a student qualified, I just.
And that's a good question too. So as it sits at 494 now, in our audit, they will come in and they will actually do an
They-
audit on those qualifying kids too. And if, what do they call it? Verification. Verification.
Verify
They'll do a
percentage.
Well, they'll do a verification to make sure what the family submitted was real. And so in every year in our audit, they'll find some families who don't respond or that it wasn't accurate, and then they get taken off the list.
Okay.
So
Well,
it's
that's-
probably gonna come in under that. That's every year we have.
3%. You have to
Right.
verify 3% of your.
Questions on enrollment or?
All right, if no questions, we'll move on then to the talent director's report and Anita.
They want to talk about food service.
Yeah, I can throw that in there. Thank you. Food service, so last year we changed to Chartwell's. A new food service management company, and we had 2 free years to compare from. Last year, all lunches were free for all students. And so was the year prior, had a full year of all free meals. And so it's a pretty fair comparison. Our total, if you take out some of the Head Start daycares and you just look at what we served in our buildings, we were up 60,226 meals. So we served 60,000 more meals last year than we did the year before. 60,000. Pretty wild to think about. It's a lot of. And it's a testament to a great partnership with Chartwell's. I think they
How
provide.
how are we handling the Head Start daycare stuff?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't?
Because free meals are
Right.
on now, so we can't.
Yeah, that's what
So we can't serve to them anymore unless they would pay.
Once we made a contract with them.
that's.
And it is a great partnership. And Andrea, our newer director now, she is wonderful and manages the staff and does a great job. And Chartwell's does a wonderful job of training. you know, because of their buying power, being such a nationwide company, we had little to no disruptions in our food throughout the pandemic, when a lot of districts were, you know, a lot of districts, they were making runs to Sam's Club because they didn't have enough inventory, didn't show up on their food trucks. And so it's been a great thing. And I think I hear that all the time from parents, teachers, different people.
Yeah. Your report.
Well, I have 7 open positions, that's 6, down one. So, yeah, well, I did a little stat kind of thing to show how many people left and how many we hired, and we hired a lot. We still have 6 positions, but we did have 4 additional positions because of kids that moved. When he says the numbers, our numbers went down, gosh, we might not know, 20, I was like, from the year before to last year. And we've had so many kids move in that have IEPs. So a lot of the new kids coming in, well, co-op wise, not just Center, but have IEPs. So I look for our numbers to John. There's a lot of new ones, but so we had to hire 4 additional teachers. So we're pairs. We're still looking for, have that big group, and then we had 4 new positions that we had to find just to meet the needs of some kids that we had come in. That needed that. Tom's been real asset already. He's out getting some training. We did finish file review this week. Last week, he and I did, and today he went to a file review training, which would have been nice to have before we did file review, but it's okay. He said, you taught me, I learned some, I already knew some things when I got there, so that was okay. But we started our department meetings with our staff, and things are going well. So we have our first tele meeting Wednesday for the year.
So far you've hired 23, so you're probably
We still have
30s is the number that you needed to hire with the new.
1 with 4 new ones, yeah. So
Yeah.
we're down to 6. Riley and Hanover, of all of them, are going to be, they're the most, we're desperate there. I have reached out today to 2 people who applied for the para aid position, or the aid position at Wakefield, and just saw they didn't get the job. So I just said, are you interested in para positions? I've got one that will be contacting, and is going to call me tomorrow when she gets off work. So hopefully we can do whatever we have to do to get her drive there. I have to pay her gas, but we'll do something.
Great, thank you. Let's move on then to the next item, which is the Director of Curriculum and Instruction report from Jacqueline.
To start on my report, I shared our new teacher training, just kind of an overview, because this is part of our accreditation process. That if you're in your first year teaching, first year with us, you get a mentor no matter how many years you've been teaching. But if you are in year 1, to the state, you have an initial license for the first 2 years before you can have your professional. And part of that is the professional development that needs to meet the state's requirements as far as the mentoring program. So they had their first training just a week ago, and they'll have their next one in October. And then we start meeting after school 3 or 4 times. So it's a great training. We had their mentors come with them because it was a small group of 3. And that was like, the conversations would be better if we had their mentors there with them. So that was greatly appreciated. Listed some of our PD for the month of September. Next on my report, I'm not going to dive into the district leadership team because that's actually on district goals 14B. We'll talk more about that, but we did have our first district leadership team meeting, and Brett and I will talk about what that kind of looks like as far as our timeline goes. Project lead, we have site directors and program directors for every building. I should have some numbers for you next month about how many kids are participating. Technology update. Our cybersecurity was in a 3-phase plan, and today was the deadline for our staff to watch their first 2 videos. We had pretty good turnout. Mr. Last was hunting down a few people today. Because we get a list, we have the names, we know who did it, who did not. I did mine last night. It was really good. I will tell you that. It was very good. And even being as involved in, working with them on certain things, I learned things from it. So slow down and be careful. So that has been good. We started Tech Minutes this year. We've sent out 2. I said they'll be released twice a year. That's wrong. Twice a month. Twice a month they'll be going out. Just trying to give parents some tips and things they can use to support healthy technology use for their children. Common Sense Media is our digital citizenship, and that's where we got some of our Tech Minute ideas from. So listed on here for you guys, the ACT dates that are coming up. Just a reminder, those 11th grade ACT opportunities are paid by the state. The students don't pay, the district doesn't pay. Those are paid for by the state. It's just a one-time thing. So for your 11th grade year, you can take it before and you can take it after if you want to increase your score, but it'll be on your dollar if you do that. So, okay, the next part on here is about October 14th, and I'm glad Debbie brought up the job shadowing. This is actually submitted by Lisa. Just put it in my report. Her and I've been working on this together. October 14th is an early release day, and they were trying to kind of find a way to take some unique opportunities for our kids and put them on a half day. For example, our freshmen take the pre-ACT, and we put it on that day. And then our juniors have a reality financial simulation that day. Our seniors have, they're gonna do the FAFSA and financial assistance. And so our sophomores have been doing job shadows. And if they have their job shadow done, they wouldn't report that day because we kind of have the staff all shifted out. If they have not completed their job shadow, they will be job shadowing that day. We are going to use some Suburbans or vans to bring the Wakefield kids to join for the juniors and seniors. The reason we're not using a bus is because we don't want to make the seniors wait over here when they're done with the FAFSA or the financial simulation, because it will take all morning. And so that way the seniors can go back and be released and just a little bit early. So I'm trying to see if there's going to be some other ideas or things they're going to do with the seniors besides the FAFSA, but our kiddos who are interested in military or working after graduation, they're going to have relevant activities for them. So it's kind of a nice day to just do some of these unique things and participate in it. Any questions on that? I did put in here, we would rate the attendance rate that day compared to their daily attendance, just to make sure it is well attended if we're going to continue in the future. And I put notes in here. We have our ELA adoption process starting soon. And that will start next week, reviewing the standards, reviewing our own data, and looking at ed reports and what works clearinghouse for some potential resources to consider. And then at the very end, I put a copy of our guidelines for online opportunities, but wanted to share the numbers. We made some adjustments, I know, at Wakefield High School, and wanted to share with you these numbers for both high schools. At Wakefield, we have 16 students participating in online, 18 courses through Edgenuity, and 8 of them through free community college credit. And then at CCCHS, we have 60 students taking online opportunities, 56 courses through Edgenuity, and 19 through community colleges. So you can tell by the math, some kids are taking both, or some kids are taking 2 Allen County and 2 Edgenuity or whatever. I've been in both buildings when there's been a group of online kids working, and it's been really interesting to go around and ask them about the classes they're taking and why they chose them. And some of them have even shared, well, it was free credit and I don't know if I'm really interested. So I thought
why not try and see, which is pretty smart, pretty good for them. So just wanted to share those numbers, and that's just semester one. So there'll be other classes they take second semester.
Back to the ELA adoption, I hear, last year we did science adoption.
Yeah.
I hear stuff at home about science, which I never heard before.
Good.
So, and it's interesting that they come home with the same facts. Like, I can tell that they're learning the same standard at the same time.
Yeah.
So
It's
anyway, I just thought you might want to know that.
Good. I'm glad.
I hear stuff about science at home, so I hope
That's
that the
awesome.
adoption of ELA goes well as well.
So Jacqueline, how does I've been looking at a lot of the KeySat information, right? The
Mhm.
accreditation process is coming up in the last 5 years that you guys have been working on this. So, I mean, I'm assuming, but can you just explain to us and the public too, how, this process that you're going through with your team and the ELA adoption ties back to, the one piece of the accreditation
Sure.
that you're working on?
Well, one of the pieces is when we get our team together, not only looking at the ELA standards, but looking at our data. So here's our data over the last 6 years. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What do we need to improve on? And we'll really not only use our state assessment data, but our Ames Web data, which dissects skills. And so we will get down and look at what skills are we struggling with? Do we need more? Whether it be professional development or a changing resource, what is the fidelity of the resources we currently have? And has that been used with fidelity? So that data will definitely play into our conversation. Something we're going to share with our data has definitely been our attendance, which really has plays a significant role, especially, it doesn't matter your age, but it really plays a huge role in our littles that are learning to read. That attendance plays in. So we will also throw in the attendance data with that team.
And then a final question on the online opportunities. So a couple of changes that we made with some staff this year. So how is that going? The numbers seem large. I don't know. in
Sure.
comparison.
So an example would be at Wakefield. I think we had maybe 3 kids take advantage of an online opportunity, and now we have like 3 courses. So now we have 16 kids and then 26 different courses that they're taking advantage of. And so Jordan has been working with Kelly on that, but that has been a great shift for them. Kids getting free college credit, and kids getting to take a course of their interest through Ingenuity or through the community colleges, which has been nice. They don't have some of the on-site classes just due to teacher qualifications and things. And so some kids are taking college algebra, English comp, college speech. So again, getting some of those prereqs and things out of the way before they go for secondary. So
The goal is being achieved.
it is.
Good.
It's been
Great.
It's been great to see.
Questions for Jacqueline? Thanks, everybody, for your reports. That moves us to our next section, which is the discussion of business items. Quite a little bit to get through here. So first item is the needs and state assessment. So I'm going to ask Mr. Nelson and probably Jacqueline and whoever to participate.
To show those, because I'm on that.
Is that easier if I bring that up?
Yeah.
So this is, as you guys know, this is new to us this year, new to every Kansas school district this year, this process. It was put into place by the legislation last spring. And so, and this came very late in our school year. And by the time we knew it was official, we really didn't have any time with our staff to go through this process. And so our building principals, we met late in May, early June, to put together our plan. to accomplish these requirements that were put into place. And so our first step was the needs assessment. And so we met with our admin team and asked them to meet with their BLTs, so their teacher leaders, and their site councils, and engage their site councils and their BLTs. Ideally, we would have known about this before our teachers left for the year, so they could have engaged their entire staff. But that's where they started with their needs assessment. Then we came back and reviewed what they put together, the feedback they received. And then on the first work day or PD day they had with their teachers in the building in August, they reviewed this information with their staff and made sure that they were on board with it, didn't want to make any changes. And so, you know, like I told our principals at first, I was pretty frustrated that somebody sitting in Topeka is going to tell us how we need to take care of district business. And I had to get over that. And I did, and I have. And I told our staff, our principals, and our district leadership team a couple of weeks ago that, hey, this is a requirement, but let's capitalize on it and let's use it to our advantage and use it, the information, authentic information, so that we can use it in our KISA as we end our KISA cycle. We have to set our new goals for our new cycle. Let's truly use the information that we get to gather feedback from our stakeholders and our patrons to help us develop our new goals. So I've told our admin team and our DLT that these are going to be a work in progress, and that we're going to continue to solicit feedback from all of our stakeholders as it relates to our building and district needs. And so these are going to be kind of living, breathing things that we're going to do. And so we finalized this part of the needs assessment, knowing that we're going to continue gathering feedback and gather more. And then, so you had the second part of the Senate bill, which was the state, what they call the state assessment review. And so if we pull up, so there was 3 questions that the statute requires the board to answer. And so we went through the same process with these same 3 questions. Said, well, what's our staff think? What do our principals think? Like, what are the true needs? And so we went through and we used a tool that Greenbush helped put together, and we're a part of their consortium. And so it was a really nice tool to help us centralize our data. And so we spent a lot of time going through and looking at our data, analyzing our data, and our not only our student achievement data, not only state assessments, but attendance, Ames Web, Kansas Communities of Care data. We looked at a lot of things and tried to brainstorm what are some of the barriers to overcoming proficiency. What are there some actions we need to take to remove the barriers? And in particular, it asks about budget items. And then the third part to the statute was that it identifies the amount of time we estimate that it will take for each student to achieve grade level proficiency on state assessments. And something that I talked a lot to our admin team about, we kind of have 2 different things going on, in my opinion, right now as it relates to student achievement. So there's this big push from a certain group in Topeka for kids to score in levels 3 and 4 in state assessment. Agreed, super important. We need to keep striving to do that. But we're forgetting about category 2. What does category 2 mean? That means the student has met grade level proficiency. They have met and mastered grade level standards. And so I have some problems or troubles understanding where it says you're only educating to the highest quality if you have all the kids in 3 and 4. Well, that's not true, because if we're teaching and assessing our grade level standards, that's level 2. And so I argue and encourage our staff and principals to, when they analyze data, look at every category, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But if you want a measure or a benchmark or something that shows evidence of good teaching and learning, look at your percent of students scoring in levels 2, 3, and 4. And I think that's highly important. And so I think as we move and we look at KESA and we look at our board goals, I think we should be highly focused on that, moving kids out of level 1, moving more kids into level 2, 3, and 4. And yes, we need to get better at more students scoring in levels 3 and 4, because if they can score in level 3 and 4, their odds of being successful in college go up. And so it all needs to be looked at comprehensively, but I guess that's my little soapbox on not looking at isolated pockets of data, but looking at it from the whole perspective. And so then that brings us to this work that's been being done for the last 5 years, 6 years as a part of KESA. And so this is what we call our data dashboard. And so if you want to know anything about our school district and how our students are performing, you can go to this data dashboard and you're gonna have any piece of data that you would like, probably more than we even need, but it is a comprehensive one-stop shop for how our kids are performing. And so we look at, the state board outcomes. We look at a few other areas that we think are highly important. So we look at kindergarten readiness, our graduation rate. Ames Web is that early literacy and numeracy screeners. That's our snapshot, our dipstick on how are our kids doing, and then we use that to drive our instruction. But it's a great tool to get a basis for feedback on how our instruction is impacting our students. Social emotional growth, post-secondary. So that's your effective rate, your success rate. And remember, the state looks at post-secondary data by 3 categories, and we can show those here. So your graduation rate, your success rate, and your effective rate. So your success rate, and this is an important number to watch for and monitor how we are doing, because this is that ultimate outcome. How are our students doing once they leave us? And I don't know a better measure of our work than that. And so the success rate is, has the student earned an industry recognized certificate while in high school? Have they earned a post-secondary certificate? So that could be a tech school, that could be a community college, that could be anything that's in. KSD puts out a big list. What's it called, Jacqueline? There's a
That
big,
was accreditation, but like even CDL, CNA, everything.
there's a
There's 2
big list
pieces.
of what's industry recognized and what's gonna, the likelihood that that certificate is gonna allow that student an opportunity to earn a good wage and make a good living. And so, and then number 4 is, we track by cohort 4 years, every graduating class from our school district, and we track it by cohort. And if your success rate will go up as long as if that student's enrolled in a post-secondary 4-year degree, as long as they're still enrolled in their first and second year, then the state counts, it says, hey, that student's on track, that student is making their way towards graduating. There's a lot of research and data about as long as the college student can be in good standing and still enrolled for the first 2 years, their likelihood of making it through is highly likely. And so those are, and then you have your effective rate. And so then that takes your graduation rate, your success rate, and it gives you a score. And so those are the main pieces of data that we sifted through as we looked at our needs assessment and our state assessment review and put together the beginning stages of where we're headed. And this is going to blend with probably several of the next agenda item. And so maybe I'll spend a little bit of time here and then we can do what you guys want or talk about what you want. But so just to give a quick snapshot on that. So number 1, even though it's a requirement, we want to truly use the information that we gathered through the needs assessment and the state assessment review as tools and as data points to use in our next accreditation cycle. So we are ending our, it's supposed to be 5 years, 5-year accreditation cycle, but COVID, you could take a pause year, and we took a pause year during COVID. Many districts did. And so it's actually year 6. And so that's what our DLT team is going to work on this first semester. We're going to finalize this accreditation cycle. We're going to get our materials ready, our narrative ready, and then we'll have a visit by our
Outside visitation.
outside visitation team. And they're gonna, they don't just come and visit. They want facts, artifacts showing progress towards the goals that we have set. And so they'll come do our on-site visit. We'll do that part of it. And then all of our information, we do a narrative to them that they add to the narrative, might have some questions for us, but then it goes to the ARC, and it stands for
Accreditation Review Committee.
Accreditation Review Committee at KSDE. And then the ARC will either accredit the school district conditionally, accredit, or
No credit.
you're not accredited.
They're nominated.
Thank you. And so it's really a big deal. And I think we have some really exciting things in our data to share. And we also have some things that we need to work on. And that's the whole point in this process, that we want to, take some time to celebrate the things we've done a really good job at, but also take a very critical and analytical look at the areas in which our students may not be performing where they need to be, and set goals in those areas and work on those over the next, 3 to 5 years. And so,
What would change if we're not accredited?
Well, if you're conditionally accredited or non-accredited, whatever, they give you action steps that are expected.
you kind of get put on an improvement plan.
Yeah, and they tell you here and what. And they provide the support as well, if that needs that.
And that accreditation process will start in December. Is that correct?
We submit our last 6
You
years of
submit
work
it in
in
December.
December. I doubt we are part of the cohort group, the largest group turning in their cycle 5 this year.
Okay.
We volunteered to turn it in first semester. A lot of, I don't know how many, but typically you would turn it in by May.
Okay.
That's what the last 5 years have done. They turn their stuff in May, April, May. We volunteered to turn it in early. We wanted to kind of capitalize on doing the needs assessment, as well as having some of our ESSER money specifically directed towards professional development and learning. It was just, the stars kind of aligned, and we thought, let's get it turned in December so we can use second semester to finalize goals, and then intentionally focus our efforts for the next school year.
So second semester, our current plan is second semester will be dedicated to continue to unpack our data, continuing to reflect on how we're doing, and work on establishing our new goals for the next cycle that would kick off. So the goal would be to be done with the whole process and ready to launch with new goals and clarity starting fall of 23. And so part of that next agenda item is then asking you guys, is this a time in which you would like to also look at the district goals? And so we can talk about that then, but if that were to happen, we would need, if you guys wanted to do that or revamp them or look at them or refresh them, we would ideally, our request would be that the board would have that done by the end of January so that we could hit our first DLT meetings. Because in the best case scenario, the board sets the goals, sets the vision, and then you set us off to go develop action plans and action goals to meet your goals. And so before we get too busy on setting new action goals, we wanted to make sure that you guys feel good about the current and existing. So on the need.
Before we move
Yeah.
to goals though, I do have just some, as this is new.
Yeah.
I guess I need some clarification as to kind of how this is gonna work for us as a board. So these came from district administrators and
Which one?
teachers on the
Needs assessment.
needs assessment,
That Excel thing.
not, well, both,
Yeah.
the Excel thing and the 379 Clay County State Assessment Review for Needs Assessment.
Yeah.
And it's listed there, not only each building, but also our district summary. The barriers are listed, and then they identify budget actions. How are we to gauge that those budget actions were addressed or met? If it's on, for example, the very first one is that which I'm assuming teachers and administrators feel that they need increased salaries. So how would we know if we met that goal?
So my, probably not the specific answer as you're looking for, but my hope would be that the needs assessment, this state assessment review for budget considerations, whatever you end up doing with board goals, I hope gets captured there. Whatever we end up doing with action goals gets captured there, because in the end is what we should end up with by the time we start in fall 23 is a framework for a strategic plan.
Correct.
So it should include the board goals. It should be pretty clear and explicit on what we're working towards on meeting. And then we're going to develop action plans to achieve those that we're going to bring back to you. And within those action plans, there's going to be very specific targeted benchmarks that are going to have data associated with them that we come back as a group and say, hey, how are we doing every few times a year? So my hope is that this is part of the whole process that will have an ending at the end of this year and end up with a strategic plan with board goals and very strategic district goals with benchmarks. So something like salaries, if that comes out as the highest level of need after we're done with this work, we're going to have a benchmark written for salaries for teachers. And we're going to have a measurement. I would hope that it would be something like by 2030, we would like to be at very clear benchmarks. And so
I just found it interesting that that was the first item, because we've talked about during negotiations that we are just in similar districts to our size and geography. In the past few years, we've gotten to teacher beginning salaries that are just below Manhattan and Junction City.
Those aren't ranked in order.
Yeah.
Those are not ranked in order.
And when we had our tool, they had a whole bunch of them listed, and you could we checked boxes and it just put them together. It wasn't
Okay,
prioritized.
it wasn't prioritized. Okay, but that was an example to me. I was like, so we have increased our base salary to be more
It
competitive.
maybe
So
should
how do
say
we know when
continue
we have?
increasing, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, but it was just a specific example, and then, how do we? But I think you did answer that, and that we're hoping to break this down even further, and I feel strongly that a strategic plan is time. I feel strongly that and just knowing what I have from going to my KASB training, it's like, that is paramount to us being a strategic progressive board, is knowing what that plan is and not haphazardly going about our work as a board.
And that is what we would hope to achieve throughout a year-long process is by the end, we have real true clarity around the direction that we're headed and the goals that we're striving to achieve. And that we're all held accountable for those and that they are specific and measurable. And instead of working on 15 things, we are hyper-focused on working on the most important.
The other thing that comes to my mind, as I was reading through all of this, and there's a lot here, right? And so it's a lot to digest, but going back to the CTE example and the opportunities, right, that are afforded by all of our kids, what is the level of staff needed to be able to provide those opportunities? And then what level of, salary and budget do we need to provide for the staff, right? And so it becomes this
it's a framework.
symbiotic relationship almost of
Right, and
We
so you
have
have to
this-
develop, well, this is the goal, we want to be able to provide, you know, our kids
This
with
level.
all of these opportunities.
Mhm.
In order to do that, we have to have X amount of staff or X amount of services. In order to do that, we need X amount of a budget, you know, and so one thing leads to the other, and that's
And I
really
think,
truly what our number one goal of a school district, you know, as a board is.
I think the best analogy that I can come up with is, my hope is that the school year, if our school district is a suitcase, we truly take everything out of the suitcase. Everything. We unpack everything. We look at everything. We open everything. And when we start fall of 23, we only put back into the suitcase the most highly important pieces and work that we need to accomplish that's aligned to goals and specific measurable outcomes.
From childhood, right? You know, education from an early childhood perspective, preschool. You know, what is it gonna require for us to be able to get these kiddos started? You know, absenteeism, like you talked about, right? Being able to read at an early level. We have to have kiddos in our program. So what are the things that we could provide to those kids?
Yeah, when I read addressing the division between opportunity gap and achievement gap, I immediately thought of early childhood and kindergarten readiness, when you look at that number, and it just continues and all of those parts. This is incredible list to build from for what we can then move towards district goals with, and how we can be strategic with our finances and all of that. So
How has redesign kind of played into this, and how has it affected this process too? Because there's some of these, like the assessments that where like during redesign, it's like, well, we're trying something, but then, well, that's not quite working, and we're gonna, you know, so we're gonna shift this, and that could, you know, had some effect on some of the assessment things that went through, and because we were kind of going through that process at the
It's
same
an
time.
excellent question and something that we've talked a lot about, the state's talking a lot about. And I think Dr. Watson, he's a great visionary leader. And he is also, you know, I was at, that was at USA when Dr. Watson gave his ending send you off speech. And that was one thing he was hyper focused on. So 5 years ago, when redesign started, we started with the 5 Rs. The 5 Rs were the starting point to redesign, you know, this new vision for Kansas, and those have shifted into now the 5 or the 4
5 outcomes,
5
but 4
outcomes.
principles.
And yes, so you have 5 outcomes, the 4 principles. And so long story short is what he focused on was, yes, we started out with the Rs and working towards this. But he said, remember, one of those Rs and one of the outcomes is still results. And he brought a hyper focus to that, yes, we need to redesign. Yes, we need to focus on social, emotional and graduation or all of these things, but results is still an important part of the success of the school district. And so the answer to that is the way the state's going and the way I hope our end outcome is, that it's all in one. That we are redesigning, and our redesign efforts are aligned to meeting that goal. So if in our redesign process, we say, hey, we want to try X, Y, and Z, once we have a true strategic plan in place with goals and measurable outcomes, we can say things like, well, tell me about how that part of redesign is going to improve. What on this list is that going to work towards improving? That's specific and measurable. And same with budget or finance or budget requests. Okay, I hear your request. Let's look at our strategic plan and let's talk about how that purchase would help us improve in this specific, in what specific area would it help in? And so I think the long story is, short is it needs to be all combined into one process. We need to be intertwined in everything that we do.
One of the first steps in design thinking is to define your needs, and that is qualitative, but it's also quantitative. And so we brought that back up with our district leadership team. We can have survey data and we can have input data, but we also have the number side that we need to take into consideration.
to meet, and I want to leave this open as long as it needs to be open, but I'll just tell you what we need to end with, and then we can continue. Just, we need to end with, that's on, where's that Excel sheet? That's down here. So then this is the, a lot of discussion has happened here, but statutorily, this is what we have to present to you guys, ask you guys formally these 3 questions and solicit your feedback. And then, once we do that, August and assuming you approve the budget, August has to put in the minutes of the budget approval that you reviewed the needs and state assessment. And then we've met statutory guidelines. But again, my hope is that this needs assessment, state assessment review, these are going to be a part of everything that we do throughout this year that are going to get added to, that we're going to continue to solicit feedback on to help with our improvement process.
So do you need us tonight as a board to answer these 3 questions for you?
I guess my interpretation from this was there anything further
Yes.
that wasn't listed
Absolutely.
in the summary? Otherwise,
Yes.
I feel like the summary is very extensive and well encompassing,
Yeah.
very encompassing of lots of different options for us moving forward. So I guess I was thinking if
Yeah,
there was
we-
anything
there doesn't
further
have to be,
to add,
right, but
otherwise we would.
And so of this list, is there anything that you guys would like to add, tweak, take away, remove, something we missed?
top of their head. The only thing that I thought about, and it doesn't, I don't know that it really, it probably says it in some of these pieces, but it doesn't really spell it out specifically. But if I'm looking at from the district perspective, right, in summary, not by an individual building, but identify the barriers that must be overcome for each student to achieve grade level proficiency on assessments. We don't take assessments. When is the very first?
Third grade.
assessment? Third grade, right?
Reading and math,
Third grade, okay. But should we include, some piece about the early childhood?
Well, we do, and it is in there, and they have to list the other screeners. So we start Ames, we have to Ameswood screen starting with kindergarten. And
Okay,
at the end in May, K through 12, go into each kid and mark whether they were at level, below, or.
yes, we
so
know
that-
you're doing it. We were asking
It's
whether,
part of the
where
assessment
it's-
questions.
where is it listed, I think is what April's asking.
Let's grab it.
yeah, I guess my comment is.
So even on Wakefoot Elementary under section 2, we have our ages and stages data that we referenced.
But do we need to put that on the district summary, I believe is the question. Right.
Yeah, that's just, exactly.
I think it.
Or to modify the wording on the district summary.
And I think it depends on the intent of that. And so one part of this is we had to meet the statutory requirement, which was do a state assessment review, which included
Okay.
state assessment only.
I
And
did
that's
not
kind of
realize
what
that.
this
I
is.
see. Okay, okay,
And then our needs assessment and our KISA and our goals are gonna be
Okay.
everything.
okay.
This particular statute was targeted specifically
state
to.
assessment.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's 2, if you look on the Excel document, each building has 2
Yes.
tabs.
I noticed it.
One is state, one is.
Okay. Okay.
Got it. So this document that you're asking about of us this evening is just state assessment, not needs. Is that correct?
Mm.
Okay,
So the only thing that I could think of, which would be almost impossible to measure, which makes it a difficult goal, right? Is motivation of students to care.
You know, are they drawing pictures with the bubbles when they're doing a state assessment because they think there's no value in completing them or putting effort forth? Are they showing up for school with the mindset that, hey, this is a valuable education? How do we motivate the kids or help them recognize it?
That was
That
on
was our
there.
lowest measure.
It was, and it showed improvement over the year, but yeah.
How do you include that in a?
I mean, I think it'd be easy enough to put student motivation, add student motivation.
Personal, something about the student taking responsibility for their.
That's a good point. We can certainly add that.
And then any budget actions that should be taken to address and remove these barriers that isn't already included.
When you talk about increasing the salary and comparing to other teachers, and that is one measure, but we also need to recruit teachers against other professions as well.
I was just using that as an example of
Yeah.
how do you measure whether it was achieved or not. I'm not debating that it should be there or not. I was just asking how are we going to measure these things? And I think that was answered. They're kind of two separate issues, really. Recruiting and retaining staff and the factors that go into that.
Do we have the tangibles that we need as a district to be able to provide education to the kids? Science classrooms, equipments, and welding machines and carpentry machines. Things that I know very little about. But do we have what we need, or does that need to be something we identify?
Equipment, I mean,
So we could do something like in ensuring.
That's measurable though, if you want to
yes.
ensure
Here, so
equipment and supplies to meet standards.
Are sufficient to meet standards.
You're supposed to teach a chemistry standard and you don't have the equipment to perform. And that's
Bunsen burner.
sure.
That
What other chemistry?
And
Okay, that's all you got. Okay.
And not only that, but the ratio of that equipment to the students, do have 5 students sharing one thing, so 3 students really don't care anymore because they never get to use it. The 2 smartest ones get to use it, and the other 3 are just kind of hanging in the background, maybe filling in some blanks.
And then the last one, identify the amount of time the board estimates it will take for each student to achieve grade level proficiency on the state assessments if the budget actions would be implemented.
I thought these were excellent answers. I just wanted you to know. Because it is very, well,
immeasurable.
Abstract.
what if we have, our student population is who comes to live in our county and
Ever changing.
that ever changes. Mhm.
I think my biggest one was bullet 3, and I don't
Yeah.
think the public knows this as much as they should. But I just found it ironic that some folks in Topeka are asking us to answer these questions about our district, yet they're still not fully funding special education at the statutory level that they're supposed to. It's supposed to be at 92%. As of this year, I think it's probably gonna be around 68 or 70%, which means that we are spending
We have to come up with the difference.
round number, $1 million a year to fund special education when statutorily it's supposed to be funded at 92%. I just found it ironic that they're asking us to do this, yet they're not fully funding.
We had the opportunity to pass more funding and they chose not to.
But that is a true and real barrier to educating our students and
At grade level proficiency. Mhm. Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments on this item? Anything else that you hope to gain from? Okay, so then we'll move into district goals, which kind of we've kind of woven in and out of this already.
Well, I can do that.
we're fighting over is driving.
I see, okay. So there's some, I think you've done a pretty nice job of, kind of framing this piece of it and what our responsibility as a board, is and, helping you set goals for each, whether that's by district or individual building level, whatever that looks like. Through the process of kind of working through this, we discovered that our goals haven't been updated since 2013. In 2016, 17, we did look at them through this process, but we
Just the
didn't.
mission statement.
It was that
The mission statements were changed.
we changed the mission statement. We decided as a board, though, we did not want to change the goals. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. So it's been 10 years now since we've,
But the 2017, when the mission statement was done and goals reviewed, that was the start of cycle 1.
Right.
So that was part of it. So that's why it's coming back again.
right,
So again, because you don't want to set goals or we don't want to set goals that don't align with district goals.
correct. Also in the board report, there's a link there. I'm going to pull that up.
This one?
Do you want to quickly review this timeline again? Is everyone kind of clear on the timeline that we have to meet for KSDE? And then our kind of hopeful goal is any questions on what that timeline would need to look like?
So we'll basically close up this cycle 5, even though it's 6 years, we'll close that up in December. And we're using the second semester to do the needs assessment. There are a few activities we're going through right now that are part of that needs assessment. For example, we did 2 of the 5 state board outcome rubrics that we're going to submit with our stuff, kindergarten readiness and IPS. And so we will do those other 3 as well as reviewing our data and needs us all that second semester. But before we start that work in February, we need.
So I kind of threw out 3 options. Keep the same goals, mission, don't change anything. Number 2, KSB, who are member organizations, 99.9% of Kansas school districts are. They have a service that they will walk you through a strategic planning process as a board. They will also solicit community feedback, do surveys, but it's extensive work. I mean, it would be several 3-hour meetings with you and community members. And that would be if you want to redo the goals and completely unpack them, kind of set a new vision and mission for us to go work on, or we could come up with a process on our own to work on those goals and revise them internally as a group. And so those are kind of the 3 choices I think that you guys have as it relates to what the next year looks like related to our district goals, the KESA cycle, all of the above.
I reviewed the district goals from
You want
the
to pop those up there
website
too?
provided, and I feel like it's time to revisit them and update our goals and objectives.
if you guys are looking at this, right, so let's say we go with option 3. For example, because I think it's pretty short-sighted of us as a board to just say, no, we're just gonna go with these without even reviewing them or talking about them at all. That's just my opinion. I think it at least needs some discussion before we make that conclusion. But let's say we do that and then we decide through that process that we're not gonna participate with KSB, but option 3 would be that you guys would maybe look at these and come back to us with some recommendations. I mean, is that, number one, is that feasible, right? I mean, you guys have a lot on your plates too, and not only are you working through your goals, but is that fair to ask you to come for recommendations for the board and the district goals? I'm not certain that it is. I think it's a question that we could talk about. And just looking at the goals that are out there today, do they make sense for where we're going? Or do they really do need to be revamped? When you went through this process 6 years ago, and you use these goals to help you identify the goals that we now have, are they outdated? I guess my question is kind of back to you first initially to say, I think they need to be adjusted, but you guys as administrators and people with abilities, do they? I guess Jacqueline, like,
Especially in the last 4 years, whenever we write a board report or do something, what is the goal? What goal does that connect to? And I would say 9 times out of 10, I can find a goal that it connects back to. I think there's some good goals on here. Sometimes I look at it, and think there's too many. It's like, which one is it? But then do you make them so broad that it's hard to identify and pick where they fall?
I guess that's where I would lean towards getting assistance from experts at KSB, where they have more guidance.
So my question to the board would be, Andy had brought up a good point with, where do we stand as a school district as it relates to the 4 redesign principles? Are those highly important to us or not? Where do we stand with the 5 state board outcomes? Are those highly important to us? And are they reflected in our goals? I don't know. Those are things that you guys as a governing body would need to answer so that when we go to set objectives and action plans, I mean, essentially, these goals should set us out to go do the work that you're asking us to do.
One of the other things that I liked about the KASB option is, there is, so key outcomes, and there's probably an opportunity to look at this, but just for the public, there's the vision, which can help us create a culture and climate that supports, the changes that are happening in our world today. I think that's important. Also help I thought this was interesting, design the best educational system for our community, right? What does our community need? So it's not just what do our students need, but what does our community need? And that community involvement piece. And then there's that community engagement. And I think we could use some help with that. My 2 cents. A liaison that can help us, know how to do that appropriately and effectively. So I would be in camp of, utilizing the services that KASB offers to, to work on this. How does everybody else feel?
I agree.
Jason, you agree?
Is there a cost involved for PSB and what is it?
There is, so it's also included here. So there's some things that are included in the service. So which includes basically a 1-hour on-site meeting that KASB would basically assign someone to our district, and they would do an initial meeting with the board to basically do an overview of our long-range planning process. And then they would work with the community and do a survey. They would help develop a survey and prepare that. And then based on our enrollment category is the way that I understand it. There's a certain fee, and I think it's approximately $5,000. Like 5,500 for our size of district.
No, 45.
Or 45.
Sorry. Wrong line. 1,000, yeah, 4,500.
And they would spend 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably 6 to 9 hours at the board table with you guys.
But if you back up the timeline, right, we have to get started on this pretty fast. I mean, as early as next month, we could potentially ask somebody to come and maybe even share a presentation with us from KSB, and certainly be glad to do that. But we're talking November timeframe to start working with them. And so what are the thoughts and what is the direction you guys want to go with it? Kind of need to decide tonight.
I do think it would be good to have an outside facilitator to help guide us through this process. Someone that's impartial that can help us work through discussions. And it's great.
Else? So do we need a motion for that, or just, I mean, I don't know if I have consensus or not, so. We are potentially going to spend some money, I guess.
Cost doesn't require it, but it
Right.
would be more of if it's the work, it's about, to
It's
me,
the
it's more about
job.
the work. If you guys want to go through that, because it's gonna be more meetings, it's gonna be more time, it's gonna be on you guys' part. And so I think, to me, it comes down to more of you guys want to engage in this process, because
And I guess the other option could be that we could, volunteer, and then we could bring the information back. We have to kind of construct a timeline with KASB, bring the information back to a board meeting in November and get approval.
I think it's my responsibility as a board member to be active in this process, since it's the foundation on which we base our decisions first as a school board and as a school district.
I feel strongly about that too. That's why we were elected, is to put in the time and effort for the community, for our school district. And so if this is what we're volunteering our time for, then it should be a priority to recommend goals for the district.
Okay,
So I guess if it's an answer to your question, I think, yeah, there should be a
Yeah.
motion and approval to begin that process. Okay.
then I'd like to make a motion that we proceed to work with KASB to help us set district goals and to evaluate our goals as early as October timeframe.
Second.
A motion, a second, any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, so let's move on then to item C, which is approval of the 22-23 budget.
is that what, because you want me to put mine in?
Just don't get mad and pull up the home. All right. Does anybody want to review the documents? We don't have to. Maybe have any questions? Multiple times. This evening.
I got a few questions.
Sure.
Looking at it, I think it's code 400 outside contractors. In capital outlay, we have 1.8 million. And also in gifts and grants, we have 1 million. I was just curious, where we get the 2.8 million at?
Well, most of that's budget authority. And so if you go back most years, we always have a line where we put in a higher amount than we think we're gonna spend. So outside contractors can mean if a boiler goes down, there's 300,000. If a roof goes bad, even if it's an insurance claim, it still has to be counted there. And so in the budget, we always try to capture all the authority that we can. So if the worst goes wrong, we have the authority to spend it. We don't have to republish.
Like for the stadium, is there gonna be a specific code we're gonna use to put that?
Yep, Andrea already has one set up.
Have its own program that's established that will cross funds where it'll be able to capture coming out of multiple funds and
It'd be like the first budget I really looked at.
Yeah.
I noticed a lot of
Yeah.
other categories
Mhm.
and they total quite a bit of money. I was just curious, like what code 800, 490.
So we use the other codes as our budget authority lines. And so those are the lines that will never hit our Skyward financial management software. But that's the categories that we use that we'll never spend, but that we use to get authority.
Yeah. So where's that money going? We don't use it. Or I guess
It's not.
It's
it's
not
not
really
really
there.
there.
just budgeted.
It's not there. Yeah, I mean, the only,
In case they need it.
and when we sit down and do our annual budget review with KSDE, they'll go through every code. And if they don't think you have enough authority, good old Dale Dennis, he'll say, put more in there, and so he's wanting to make sure that you have enough authority so that you don't, like, my first year, I think was the best example that I learned from, and was, our first year, we thought we had enough authority when we, and even made it through the budget review. Well, we did the big HVAC project. And if that bill would have come to us, a week sooner, we wouldn't have had the authority to write the check. We would have had to republish, and there was no time to republish. But if you build in that authority, and then your nuts and bolts budget that's tracked to the penny is tracked within Skyward. And so Andrea goes into our financial software and she loads our true budget lines. And that's where we hold our staff and our district accountable for the budget is within that software.
I do want to add, though, that the budget trend here has shifted in the last 40 years, whereas if you would have looked at our budget 4 and 5 years ago, every line going down through the budget was padded excessively. And with Mr. Nelson's guidance, he wanted to see more, the real codes that we see in there are real numbers that go in there. And we pick a line that we're not going to use that we use for budget authority. So that as you go down through the budget, those are real numbers. When we look at our heating and gas bills and fuel, those are real projected numbers. It's not padded, it's that padding comes into a code that we won't use.
We don't pad the actual used lines.
And we've deactivated those codes like that 800, so we don't use those.
Now, and when he says never use the 800, there are a couple of situations where it really doesn't fit other places. And it's minuscule, and you'll see that in the previous year's spending, that they're small compared to what's being budgeted. So we may have spent $1,000 in a transportation other, which is our, that's the KTA. Like when we get on the turnpike, it really doesn't fit anywhere else. So it goes into that other line. It's really small, but the budget next to it is really big. Well, we're not gonna, it's just padded.
And we are, the best thing to do is like in any code, if you go through and look at the year prior, what we actually spent the year prior, and you come across to this new year. And if you see on the new year a number and there's nothing in the last year, that's a budget authority line. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes more sense.
And so if there's nothing spent last year, but there's a number there this year, that's a budget authority line, and that line will never hit our financial software, so that can't be spent. And I was going to show you, but I don't want to. Does that make sense? The other one is salaries, and so that's something that we've worked really hard on the last 4 years has been different folks have different strategies, but we really, when it started a new strategy as it relates to salaries. And so I think it was 3 years ago, we, it's fairly common for school districts at the end of the year to do a bunch of reallocations to hit their legal max or to hit their budget authority. And the main place to do that is with salaries. And so you'd see these big fluctuations in salaries. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a different approach. And so the approach I took was, we look at general fund, LOB, at-risk, CTE, and a handful of other codes, the codes that we pay salaries out of. We said, okay, what percent of our total budget is general fund? What percent of our total budget's LOB?
Put that bottom thing up there, summary of expenses.
And so,
That tells you right there what you're talking about. See on that bottom line, other costs where it was 0, but on that first year it was 28,000 we spent on the others. But the next year we spent 0 in that other column. But you look up there where the instructions, 59% of our, it tells you how much of each one of them is what it's going to be.
but and we've come really close, and it's made closeout so much cleaner because we allocated truly the percent of revenue that fund brings towards those salaries. And then that's really helped at the end of the year with our books. So we don't have to do a whole bunch of reallocation just to make our books balance. It's their real numbers. And like our salary lines now, they are the exact percent of raises that we gave by category of employee too. So for example, this year, I think I shared in our budget presentation, we realized our free numbers keep going up. And so that means that money has to be spent, transferred from general fund at risk and spent out of at risk. And so we went in and we added, I think, 30% more salaries to at risk this year, which should help general fund at the end of the year. They have to be qualifying salaries, and we're likely going to have to do more because of what I explained earlier, but it's really cleaned up the end of the year process.
You can change that throughout the year.
As long as you don't exceed your authority.
See, and that's another place to show your authority compared to your actual spent is on that total expenditure line. If you look at 2021, it was 24,750, and then it was 24,153. Well, we've got budget authority of 32,000 for this next year. We'll probably be back at the 24,000 range more than likely. If you don't put it in there, you can't spend it even if you got it.
Yeah.
So.
Other questions? Anybody? Move to give final approval to the USD 379 fiscal year 2023 budget.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the budget as presented. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries 6-1.
Come on up and join us, Adam. You're asleep back there yet?
For being here. So the next item is to discuss the multi-purpose activity complex construction planning and naming. So we have Adam Crowell, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, with DHS here with us, and motions, you want to
All right.
take it away?
Well, where we stand at the moment is on schedule with the notes from one of the previous meetings. We are past phase 1, which was put together the project, pre-construction schedule, budget, scopes, and present. So we're to where that point is now, and upon this meeting going to phase 2. So what we have put together and prepared for the district to go out upon approval is just as listed, a pre-construction schedule for the bidders to look at, a Internally, there's a budget assembled for the project. It does not go out to the bidders. Creation of project scopes are available for the bidders to review and bid upon. And along with that, some additional information for the scopes of work, which we're asking the bidders to bid on. So that document or documents are assembled and ready to be distributed to bidding subcontractors and possible general contractors upon approval from the board. And the next part of that would be talking about timeline and how that would affect the project moving forward. As long as the project stays on schedule where we're approved tonight, we will issue bid invitations, likely even as early as tomorrow, with a bid date in early October, so the bids can be received and reviewed prior to the next meeting. Everything looks fine and goes well. The board, an approved bidder or group of bidders to be presented at the next board meeting for project approval for contracts. That would put us on schedule, depending on the bidder selected, for a project that could take place either yet this fall, winter, or at the contractor's option, summer of 23, as long as they're complete by football season, August 23. So as long as we approve tonight, or you approve tonight, and move into award at the next meeting, so the bids come back favorable and meet all the scope we need, we're on track to have a project in place that would meet the timeline established currently. Football season 23. That's where we stand right now. There are some items in this schedule that we are considering owner scope. It's one of the scopes that we're issuing with the bid invitations. And we're doing so that the contractors who are looking at the bleachers, the grandstands, the press box, the turf, so on and so forth, they understand what they're not bidding on. And those items we're considering owner scope, and they are work that the district can either do locally or do with like the building trades class at high school. And so we're specifically listing those so the contractors know they're not looking at that work. But as things progress, there is a point of no return here. Because where this new grandstand and press box is going to sit, it does displace the current restroom building up there at the track. Once that building is demolished, it has to be replaced, and which would act a new concession restroom building being needed for the next season to take place at the facility. To get that in place with the buildings trades class, that needs to move forward fairly quickly, so that way those students can work on that soon. So just say as this moves forward, that is a timeline that has to be kept in mind.
Any concerns about lead times on the materials? I know you've been talking to some contractors and things, specifically the specialty items.
I would say yes, but I couldn't dial in a specific issue, as in this project is being designed or solicited as a design build. So in that aspect, we're not mandating that the grandstand provider provide us an exact model of grandstand. We're saying provide us a grandstand that meets this criteria. It can be of different manufacturers. It can be a different, slightly different design. So in that aspect, lead times will be a factor for everybody, but the exact selected contractor may have different lead times than others bidding. And so that's something to keep in mind. Current construction trends right now are lead times are long. They're usually measured in months, not weeks right now in the industry. And so the faster the district moves, the better insulated from lead time effects the district will be. I can't tell you exactly what a lead time will be right now because we don't have a contractor, an exact system selected, but they're not getting shorter. The demand for construction is still increasing. So. Other questions?
Where are the pole vaults?
So,
They're on the east side of the field.
yeah,
There you go.
visitor, yeah.
And that was something that what resulted in quite a few extensive conversations with our coaching staff at the high school. Originally kind of thought they would be outside the track down south, but they really wanted to keep them close together and in close proximity. And so we had several meetings, and actually it came out, I think, to be favorable in this format. We looked at several different high schools and colleges that did it this way. And so it eliminates quite a bit of concrete by putting them in the field over there on the visitor side, because you don't need the concrete pads, because the turf serves as the location of the mat to sit. So you just have your one track lane there, and then the long jump and triple jump, they didn't want all the way at the other end. They wanted to keep up there. And so we did some measuring, some scope, got it to fit in there up north, and track coaches are happy.
Is that fence going to move farther north or?
It could be, but there's enough room as it sits now to fit them. But the length in which we currently have is substantially longer than the minimum required. And so even at the length we have now, they'll squeeze in there. So. And the track coaches wanted to do shared pits instead of separate pits. I guess it's a pretty common thing, so.
With the timeline, if they started, and this might be more, right, would we have time to get like freshmen done if they started this winter, like track season?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We met with Brandon Gibson and Brandon Fitzenmeyer and Brad Connor and Mr. Young and several other folks, and they kind of looked at the plans and started pre-planning on what they would need and what it would take. And their assessment was that, I don't want to quote exactly, but their viewpoint was that this will be an easier build than the Tiger House, because it'll be less complex. You won't have the pitched roof, you have a flat roof. And so, yes, they felt pretty good, but again, it's, you know, like with anything, to get them started and get a materials list and let the CAD class start rolling. And even before that, we would have to go out on the owner scope side of things and say, all right, here we need a cost for the rest of the slab. And we have quite a few locals that want to help with in-kind work, but that also complicates things too. It's great. It's a great problem, but so long story short, this, you know, as Adam shared this, if we want to hit that fall 23.
On the parking lot scope, how much of that area down there would have 6 inches of gravel?
Here,
Let's make sure we're looking at the same plan.
we're not doing any concrete or gravel in the south practice field.
Okay.
This is,
That says very clearly that it's not in project.
I think
Right.
that particular drawing had it listed as a potential parking count.
Well, no, I'm just looking at this sheet.
Oh. No.
Let me see.
Which one, which page are you on?
I'm on page 1. I think it's page 1.
Which scope is it? Turf track.
Yep, turf track. The parking lot entry drive scope.
Oh, parking.
Oh, the
Entry.
entryway.
Okay, that is on it's located at the north end of 12th Street,
here you go.
as if, you can, yeah,
Right
there you
there.
go, that yellow area, a continuation to make an entry drive that helps the traffic flow on game nights
Mhm.
in and out of that parking lot, so that there's a clear pedestrian walkway that traffic does not have to cross.
So you're gonna use the parking lot over there as a prep site?
The parking lot to the south of the complex.
Yeah.
Practice fields. and
Practice
prep
field is park.
Okay, yeah, that's the one. Says preparation of site work for demo, existing conditions for new work, filling, grading, and 6 inches AB3 gravel paving. I'm just curious how much of that area would have 6 inches of gravel.
Nothing is going down here.
That's probably a good item for clarification, that is intended to be that driveway.
Okay, okay.
So we've met with the mayor and Scott Glaves, and the mayor's engaged some of his specialty areas as it relates to a lot of these things. And so the current line of thinking that we would work on was, number one, no parking along here during events on this side of the road. But that if you come in off a Prospect, you're gonna only be able to go in and out here. And then to come on here, you can only get in and out here. And this chunk of the street will actually be closed and not used so the pedestrians can cross here and not be crossing traffic. So that you come in and out here and in and out there. And so you wouldn't be crossing traffic. And so you'd come across here and then come in right here.
How do you police that on 12th Street? Like put something up there so they can't park
That's
there?
a city, that's a city.
Yeah, as we've talked, it's
Yeah,
gonna
but
take
go
it.
up there on a Saturday morning and there's 300 cars parked up there.
Is that way tonight?
Yeah, there's no.
Yes, but that's working with the city to be.
So it's another example is like on Prospect. There's no parking signs here already, but people park there anyways. It's gonna be an education process. It's gonna be a team effort between us and admin and the city. And, you know, we're gonna just have to do our best to help educate and teach folks. There'll be some new learning and it won't happen right away, but it'll be a process.
Then the east grandstand has concrete underneath it, but the main grandstand just has gravel. Are there gonna be like concrete piers for it to sit on or?
Correct.
We included that in our packet.
That's what it has.
So we went into Abilene and Wamego and looked at theirs. And so the difference is the new grandstands are I-beam and the ones we're moving over are angle frame.
Right.
And so they sit on a pad versus the I-beam sit on
Just pure footings in here. Typically, they gravel the space underneath and use it for slightly protected storage.
So like Trax talked about, to free up some space in that white building to put their hurdles underneath there. And free up some space. And then in the restaurant concession building, there's some storage area for football. So that little shed that's not watertight will go away. And if funds would be available, the white shed that sits there, if we have some money, we would, or have our building trades class do it, would be an example, would move it out of the way, put it up over on the other side, but those are all.
So those bleachers going on the east side, are they gonna be in 12th Street right away?
No, we had our mayor had his street guys go out there and double check everything. We also did the measurements. The back of those bleachers will sit 40 feet off of the street. And they also, Scott Glaves went out to make sure we would clear the power line easement too, and we'll clear those too. So we had all those folks go out and make sure that we weren't gonna run into any issues there.
Replacement of those bleachers would likely require that fence to be relocated and a small retaining wall to be constructed in that
Well,
hillside.
that's listed in the scope, so it's crazy.
Some space.
There's a lot more. room over
I
there.
can't believe there's more than 40 feet between that street and the fence now.
There is. Once you walk out there, you can kind of.
I drove
measure
by,
it.
I'm going to, because I don't think there's enough room. I think there's a reason why we didn't put bleachers over there when we built that track, and I think it's because it's in the street right away. But it's whatever.
What other questions do you guys have?
When will the ownership stuff go out? Will you guys take care of that or do you take care of that?
BHS will help us through the pre-construction planning process to hopefully have everything buttoned up and ready to go.
With the way that the bid is set up, if we identify the contractors for the large scopes, get those ironed out, see what the budget looks like from that point. Then if it makes sense to add an owner scope item to those contractors while they're here, that's an easy thing to do contractually. It's a lot harder to be over budget and have to start pulling things back out or say, no, we don't want you to have that in your bid now and work that way. It's a lot easier to start small. You can always add to it.
I think Adam made it make sense to me most when he said, let's let these unique sports facility pieces, let's get those ironed out first, because you can't go hire a local in-town company to do turf or a grandstand. or lighting. And so that made a lot of sense to me when he proposed that approach.
So how far over 1.8 million are we gonna be?
Well, it's at 2 million.
Well, we've never voted on the extra 200,000. We voted on 1.8 million, and that
We
was.
didn't vote on 1.8, we voted on
We
700.
did? We didn't?
No,
In
we didn't.
December, what was the vote?
$750,000.
With a 750,000 match and 300,000 from Auto on Stadium.
We
So,
didn't have $300,000 included in the motion.
well, then that motion was changed, because that's was always what we talked about.
Was what we voted on in December.
Okay, so if we didn't vote on the sale of Auto Under in December, then we have 1.5.
And we didn't vote on what the project was going to cost, we voted on when we would participate as a district.
We as a district said we were gonna match the 750,000 in that motion. We haven't voted on want to add any more or spend any.
That wasn't our budget amount for the facility.
So what number
I think
are
you're
we
on.
No, I can look it up, you can read the motion.
So what number?
We
in
we
favor
agreed
of
to
it, Jeff.
match the 750,000. We haven't agreed to spend any more money than that as a
We're
board.
not spending any more money than that.
We are
So,
not.
okay, so you're gonna have
The
750 and
committee makes the extra
750, that's 1.5. And you say that Auto Unruh sale is not part of that, so how much over 1.5 are we gonna be then?
Well, the committee's already raised more money than that
Yeah,
already.
we never even talked
It
about that
doesn't have
money.
to
We've
be
never
talked
even
about.
talked
It
about it.
That
Yeah, but
doesn't
we
have to
haven't.
be talked about it. We talked about the piece of the pie that we said we were gonna be committed to as a board.
Okay,
It's
750,000
exactly
and
what
that's
we have
it.
done. Absolutely.
So when we come and there's not enough money and we've spent the 950 and the 750,
Mr. Thalman spoke to it tonight. He said that they would raise more funds.
and one of his things was better lighting, but we got a scope for better lighting up already. So is that not gonna happen until they raise more funds?
Better lighting means you could go to more foot candle versus staying at 30-foot candle, you could go to 50-foot candle or.
I still have a
higher.
question. How much over are we gonna be? I mean, you're a contractor.
I mean, until bids come in.
You don't have an estimate?
I do have an estimate put together, and it does have subcontractor input on costs. And if we're looking at just the new lighting, press bleachers and press box and the field and lanes, we're right in that 1,750,000 range. Right in there. If we're gonna add in additional work that we're considering owner scope, I think we could be easily adding a few 100,000 to that, which would push us up near 2 million. That's where I think we stand right now. Bids pending.
And how much of that do you have as contingency?
In these figures, I was running a 5% contingency, but these are also based on sub budgets. So they're as good a budget as we could get in, leading up to this.
So in other words, we're over the 2 million mark.
We're right at
Roughly.
2 million,
Roughly.
including owner scope for sure. I think that's a realistic number.
Important
Which
to
we have,
remember.
which we also have $1.85 million, more than 1.5, because we have $950,000 that's been deposited in our account. We have $750,000 budgeted in capital outlay for the field, and we have $150,000, which is part of that scope budgeted for the resurfacing of the track. Those three items added together is $1.85 million already funded and available for this project.
According to the notes sent out February 13th, 2021, it was moved that the USD 379 Board of Education agreed to move forward with the stadium project if $750,000 of private funds was raised. This motion was seconded and was put to vote, carried 6-0.
So we even agreed to spend 750,000 in match. Is that
Well, what
correct?
did you agree to?
That's exactly what you voted for.
That didn't even mention us matching it. Did it? Did I not hear you right?
This is, I read to you what it said.
I mean, at the end of the day, we have the money and what we have said we were going to do, we have done. As a Board of Education, which is only spending $750,000. The rest of it has been raised by private donations and has been budgeted in capital outlay that we have also approved. it's very, very clear. And very transparent as well.
Anybody have any other questions for Adam while he's here about scopes and?
So if there is a delay and it looks like it wouldn't be able to be completed before track, and that's when we would just wait till track is over. Is that, we're trying to preserve the track season?
Yeah, we're trying to protect track season, and we're giving contractors the option. If this goes out tomorrow, we may get lucky and get on someone's down for their slow season. Summers are typically the busy seasons for projects like these. So ideally, we find a contractor who wants to bid on this, who has ability to get to it this winter. But we're also giving them the option to finish select portions by before track season or before football season, to where we're not affecting track one way or another. We are including liquidated damages in the project, so there is a penalty for not finishing on time for the contractors who bid. Trying to build in some flexibility.
So then let's also move on to the other piece, which includes the naming of the facility.
So will all subcontracts go through you guys for payment?
No, this is only for pre-construction, so the contracts be directly with the district.
Okay. Well, I want to see when we start paying for things, I want to see it broke out. What's paying for what?
Yeah, we'll have clear contracts with.
No, I mean, is the district paying for this, or is it coming from the privately funded money?
So, and
So Andrea would have
Yeah.
the privately funded money has been deposited into a budget line item.
I understand that. So that line item, we can say this paid for this and the district paid for this.
Absolutely.
I like to see that once we start paying bills on the project on a monthly basis. If I do.
Which will probably, I mean, when would that be? I mean, not until next spring. Is that accurate or is that incorrect?
Depends on who's awarded, and when they state they can get the job started, it could be as early as November, December.
Okay. I'm not exactly sure on this timeline.
It could be.
we gave them options.
Perfect.
to start. The second portion is the Mark A. Chapman Foundation donated $300,000 to name the new facility, the Mark A. Chapman Activity Complex. Very exciting. The Chapmans have done so many great things in our community, in our county, and in our state. They're a very generous organization. Mark's widow was very appreciative and was very thankful and thought that this is something that her husband would have been very proud of to see his name on it. So thankful for them for doing that.
If no further discussion, I'd like to move to give final approval to name the new facility, the Mark A. Chapman Activity Complex, and approve the advertisers and contributors.
Okay.
Further questions? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 5-2. Thank you very much. Thanks, Adam, for the All right, let's move on then to the next item, which is the sale of Auto Unruh and the McKinley properties. So we have some information available for you guys. Hope you had a chance to review it. For Auto Unruh and McKinley. Dusty's here. If you guys have questions, or Dusty, if there's anything that you want to add.
I thought we were gonna split up the auto properties as the field and then that is to the east.
That
Yeah,
is
the
that
one-
part of that little part to the east is not Auto Unruh. That's
There
another.
you guys bought it a few years ago or whenever that was.
I thought at the last week you guys agreed to keep it together.
I had a
don't think so.
different opinion, I guess.
I don't know that we,
I guess I was under the
Gave us-
impression it was staying together, but that's what.
It's
I
two different
assumed it was.
pieces of property. I mean, it's two different deeds.
Right, I mean, you got multiple deeds, different places, but that's, I guess. So what we put together right now that you've seen is, an offer sheet, that as we market it, people would have the offer sheet that says, here's make an offer, and here's some of the things that it has to include, 10% down and that type of stuff. And then also, attached with that is a form contract to say, if you're making this offer, you're agreeing to this contract, for the most part. Now, we do allow them to put contingencies on their offer sheet, which is then something the board will consider. Whether offer A is for more money, but we don't like the contingencies, or, whatever, and be able to select that. And if there's contingencies in the offer that you accept, that would get plugged into that contract. But otherwise, the folks making the offers know, here's more or less the contract that we're entering into. With the stadium property, that's whatever the board wants to. I don't recall. I guess I thought, and I don't remember, what was said when. I thought we decided to keep that all together, just like we're doing the stadium property and the McKinley property. If we decide we want to do those two lots over there separate, but have another offer sheet and contract on that if we want to do it that way. Yes, we did buy them at different times or receive them at different times, but just like with any real estate, people buy the lot next to their house at a later date, but then sell it all together, so deed wise, what we send out or what we would sell and put on one deed could incorporate it all if that's the way you want to go.
When you're closing a possession on January 15th to 23, is there not going to be a contingency if we don't have a stadium? Like, if they have possession of it, then we don't have a football field, it's not done.
We actually do have a football field right now that we could use today.
What?
The stadium, the field that's up there right now.
Well,
We
no,
have a
if it's in
field.
the middle of construction.
I mean, I think Adam said that, our goal would be to, we would know those things.
We would
We would
know.
know the scope of that work prior to
Or-
tearing it
tearing
up.
it down,
And you would put in. the
and you have
liquidated
penalties
damages
in like any
to
contract.
hit your timeline.
Mhm.
Yeah, but you have to have a field there. I thought we talked
We can
about
play on the
before that
grass
having the
field that's
closing
there.
after, have a contingency in the closing that it'd be as long as we have a stadium. That's how I understood it the last
I
time.
think, and I'll go back, what I remember talking about was a couple of months ago, as we start trying to put together the timeline, was going, are we gonna close on this and then keep a right to use it through the end of this football season? Or are we gonna wait and close after football season so that once we close, they just have possession? I don't think the discussion was ever into the 2023-24 football season. And so as we've gotten now to September, where this thing's pushing back, we know
We know we're gonna be. able
we
to
can't
finish
close it really until middle of January. We're no longer even looking at November, or December type possibility. We're gonna be closing after football season's done anyway. So,
What questions do we have?
So when did we agree to sell those other three lots with Auto Lumber? Did we make a motion to do that?
The motion last time was just what property we were keeping and what property was going to be.
It was at the
We just
meeting.
outlined.
It was at the meeting when you asked Dusty to go write up the bid document.
I don't ever remember really. We talked about it, but we never did vote to sell it. We talked about it being separate, bought different, at a different time, separate deed. Reason we bought it, but I never talked
We
about
had
selling.
we had consent, we never voted to sell the property at all. We just said that we wanted to move forward with Dusty to prepare documentation about what that would look like if the other pieces of this were met. Phase 1 and phase 2. And that we voted on. You voted no, but it passed 4-3. and that was in July,
That's in July.
correct?
Process for future sale of auto under.
Mhm.
For the waiver of conflict, it was moved that the USD 379 Board of Education approved the staking of auto owner property survey by Campbell and Johnson, including the adjacent property in Well House. This motion was seconded. That was 17.
That was the well, that was the well house and everything.
And
That's,
adjacent.
Oh, okay, so move forward with hiring VHS construction and pre-construction. That's the 4-3. After the lights.
What would you propose instead, Jeff?
well, I didn't know we were selling that piece of property.
What would you?
Or
if
do you
wanna
want to
hold
sell
on
it? Do you
this?
not
Well,
want to
no,
sell
if
it?
we're gonna sell it, we need to sell it separate. Somebody might buy it and build a house on it.
Or they could expand the
Or,
apartments.
or maybe the city of Clay Center should buy it and expand their parking lot for the baseball field. I mean, we never, I mean, I guess I must not be paying attention because I don't think we ever agreed, we never had a consensus, we never had a vote. If we're gonna sell school property, we need to have a vote, a motion and a vote to sell it, not just a consensus.
Well, and I guess I would say that's the purpose of even this discussion tonight. I mean, what you have is what I put together. I mean, I didn't pull it out of the hat. I visited with Brad. I mean, we've had discussions about it, and yeah, if the board decides, no, we want to sell these two, it's not two lots, it's multiple lots, but these two pieces over here, separate from whoever's bidding on the larger stadium chunk, then that's simple. I mean, do another offer sheet and contract. And this person that, anybody that's buying the, putting in a bid for the stadium property will, put if they want it, put in an additional bid for the lots over there. And if those lots are meaningless to them, then we'll see what bids we get over there.
Do we have a map we can pull up so we're all talking about the same
That's what I'm looking
facilities?
It's, I believe it's in the.
It's between the
August.
corner of the fence and the house on the
This would be
north
cool.
side of that street.
Jeff, is your
There you go.
Colin
reasoning,
Terrace and
is your
Go
reasoning
to Onyx
because you would
and
like
look.
to maximize revenue for?
Well, don't you think we
Onyx
should?
High.
Well, I'm asking
I
you.
mean, I think 300,000 is too cheap
It's
for
my
my
go-to.
state. I mean, tell you the truth. I mean, we insured for over $1 million. And we're gonna sell it for we could sell it for $301,000. I mean, realistically,
Yes, I'm confused why this didn't come up before. It doesn't make sense to me that you would think that we would separate a adjoining property if we own all of it to sell it as two separate entities.
but we just gave away
Are we
property
gonna be-
to the city that was adjoining.
Are we gonna be lot as a trade? Are we gonna be lotting this ourselves? I mean, at some point, I think we need to get back to our focus, which is education of the children and being fiscally responsible, not micromanaging a stadium.
Well, I guess it's my physical responsibility to make sure that we spend taxpayers' money and money with the school district in the right way. And if we can get more money out of it and have more money to do stuff for kids, then we need to do it.
and not
Okay,
give
so
property
Can you show
away.
me, can you go up there and show me what you're talking about?
Right there on that.
Right there.
We bought that property about 6 years ago, probably. Mike Foltz was here and we are gonna build a locker room and facility for the football stadium and the baseball stadium. That was the plan. They tried to sell us the building right across the street right there to the south of it too. We told them we didn't want it.
And related discussion, different than what we're talking about that area down there, but Campbell and Johnson is working on a new description, and I guess it will play into this. Follow up with Jason or whatever, but with the swapping with the city and the little sliver on the left and getting rid of the well house. So we will have a good surveyed legal, take that legal description and go, this is what it is. So, and he's contacted the state concerning that highway 24 right away. to get some clarification stuff. It's just one of those titles and descriptions that have come down and so once we did that, they're gonna give us, so like the legal description that's in here, it's gonna look different when somebody actually buys it and says, here's the true
Specifically.
footprint of what you're getting. But I don't. Anyway, so just informationally, I need to follow up with him. I don't think it was going, his description was going to include those down in the bottom right corner because they're so clearly defined, lots 11 and 12, and I mean, those are real straightforward. But I'll make sure if you were to say, no, we want to do those on two separate offers. Or hang on to the ones in that property in the lower right hand corner.
Should we keep that property for parking?
It's not our
It's not our facility. We just
The
lease it.
use
baseball
it, though.
stadium is used for, is the city property. I don't feel like I need to provide parking for a city facility.
This is just me personally, but that was one thing that I struggled with, that the city gifted us the property to use for the sports tournament for the kids. So and we're gonna profit off of it. I know, in addition to increasing the sports facilities here for our kids, which is feasible, but this is just my thought process. So that's why when something like that gets brought up, that there's potential there for parking, for contributing to the city's sports complexes for the kids that's already there. That kind of makes sense to me if the city's interested in potentially developing there.
It's my impression
That's
that
just
the
kind of my
city
feeling.
doesn't, they gifted it because they didn't want to maintain it anymore. And it was best to just give it to us. That they don't want it back.
When it was gifted, was that, because I'm not from here, so I don't know. Was that baseball field there? Was it to that size and that? And that's just, I don't know, so I'm just asking.
I guess I don't have a problem with dividing it into two lots. I do have a problem with this continuing to drag our feet and not being open with discussion before we get to this moment each month, so we can see how many months we can drag out this discussion. But I feel like we should be spending our time on curriculum and on other things that are more important to our children.
So if we separate it, then are we going to allow it to be bid? Or are we gonna keep it and try to do something to go with it? What's the suggestion that we as a district do with that piece of property?
Oh, apparently somebody decided that we're gonna sell it because it's already in here. So let's separate it and sell it.
I don't think we have, it's not a space that we can use as a district.
Not at
I don't
this
think
point,
it's
not
a
at this
small-
point.
It's a usable space, so I would say, but
What's the harm of including it in? the-
Maybe somebody else might want it that doesn't want the rest of it. You're limiting your bidders. I mean, if somebody wants just those lots right there to do something else with, they gotta buy auto unruh to get it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're limiting your number of bidders that are gonna buy that. I mean, I think you wanna open it up and get as many people as you can to bid on it. And if that little piece is sold separate, you might get more bidders on it and be well auto unruh.
And I mean, I don't disagree, Jeff, with that. I mean, any developer, anybody looking at auto unruh,
I mean, you're talking about Brett here, last month was talking about wanting to build a house, have the construction trades class build a house somewhere in the city. We own a piece of ground. You could build 2 houses there, the construction trade class. Or you can sell it and be done with it, and move on.
So do we need motions today? What are we looking for?
We need motions to proceed with the sale of the stadium and McKinley, yes.
yes. And if we want to split this out, then we need to make a separate motion that says we'll proceed with the motion excluding this piece to be sold separately, and you'll have to come back with.
No, I think we can,
I think
we can
the-
vote and
To sell.
If the board wants to sell all 3 tracks, then I would say we can identify it as the stadium track, the lots to the east, and McKinley. Somebody makes a motion. Well, maybe before that, but we need to reach consensus, or at least talk about, do we want to sell that? This whole thing is one, or do we want to separate it? Do we, maybe that's the first thing we got to get figured out is, do we have a motion to sell all of this property and then talk about how we're going to sell it?
Can we just do 3 separate motions with the first motion that I'm for McKinley, and then a motion for auto owner and a motion for the lot?
To do that?
Or you say
But-
we're gonna sell
No.
3 tracks of property.
Yeah.
As individual tracks.
yes.
Right, so the big, or not big decision, but I don't know, is it consensus, or is everybody thinking sell those lots separate from the stadium?
We have no
Speculate
problem.
all you want.
Yeah.
I don't know that
We
there's
have,
advantage over one or another.
Doesn't hurt, I don't think, but
Doesn't hurt to sell them separately.
yeah, there's no harm
Right.
in separating them.
So if we're gonna sell them
If one
separate,
bidder wants to bid on both at the same time, then
Then
he has.
that-
right, if that's
Yeah.
critical
We're
to
opening
whoever's
and
buying the
closing
stadium,
them.
they're gonna,
Mhm.
That's what Jeff was right, that question, right? One of them.
Is there gonna be a minimum bid on that in McKinley?
to date, we haven't talked about minimum bids on McKinley,
Mhm.
and I don't know if you want a minimum bid on that, or,
All of them reserve the right to reject any bids. so.
Mhm.
right, we can,
It comes
we
down
don't
to
have
us
to
to-
accept any offer.
Right. That's final say.
I think the other one we discussed a minimum bid was the auto owner.
So a motion to sell all 3 tracks separately, I believe would be sufficient enough to move forward. And all I would do is create another offer sheet and contract for the lots down there in the corner. Right? I mean, that's,
I move
you sell all
to
3
sell
tracks.
all 3 tracks as individual contracts to be submitted as presented.
Could we clarify also it's McKinley, auto owner, and the lots?
Please, I'll
Yes.
in my motion.
That's probably in all 3 tracks. And
Yes.
we're just sitting here looking.
Call them the southeast. What they call the
Southeast.
Southeast track.
Southeast
West,
lots.
West
Southeast
Court Street.
So we have a motion,
second,
we have a second.
The question is, it's sealed bid, because we never really vote, does it have to be voted on? Because
That
everything's
was
really,
consensus.
What,
no, I didn't
again,
agree with that.
I guess,
Consensus.
The-
To be unanimous.
Yes,
it's
the
in
sealed
the
bid is in the contract.
Mhm.
it's in the offer sheet.
That's how.
Right.
On the
So-
offer
Correct.
sheet, I
Offer to
said sealed
purchase.
bids,
Correct.
yes. So in this motion that said
Yep.
approve selling these
As presented.
with the offer
presented.
sheet is presented, I think it includes that. Now, whether we want additional discussion on that.
It says right here, sealed,
Right.
sealed bid.
on the
That
offer
is-
sheet.
that is how
You
school
look at everything,
districts.
you get your best deal, like everything's moving to live auction and online auction. And so I can't vote to have sealed bids. I just, like any piece of farm ground, if you want the best price, you let people fight it out. You're pretty much taking away your gain of value by having sealed bids.
I mean,
So-
I think to Debbie's point, though, I mean, our goal isn't to capitalize and make money on the sale of this property. Our goal is to not have to maintain the property and to keep funding a property that we don't need.
Yeah, but I also think it's also our responsibility to get the most, if we're gonna sell something, we need to get the most money out of it, and we're probably gonna need it at the stadium.
Well,
The
but
way
we
it sounds.
also said in previous meetings, we have had a discussion and consensus, whether that's a vote or not, but we have said a $300,000 minimum bid.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, I
that,
agree with that.
And we've done sealed bids for all of every district property sale,
What else have you sold?
the houses every year.
So big. I think the bid opening ought to be at the board meeting though.
Well, it
Personally.
And I
says-
believe the way I have
says-
it is submitted to our office. I think that was kind of talked about originally. Yeah, I'm not gonna sit down there.
No, but I think they ought to, whenever we get them, or whenever the time comes, that we ought to open them right here in the
At the-
public venue and open them up.
Board
and-
it
meeting
says,
on-
Board
it
meeting.
says that the board meet on
On the
Monday,
14th.
November 14th.
That's what it says.
It says they'll be approved at that meeting. I don't, does it say
It says
open?
it will be
Oh.
received by 5 PM on Monday, November 14th.
And then we'll
And
open them.
offers
And
will
then
be considered and
I'll bring 'em up
accepted or
here.
rejected at the school board meeting on Monday, November 14th. So
So we have a motion.
And is, I want to be clear, that's right. I mean, I'm gonna be at my office. I'm gonna have my envelopes and we'll come up here. You know, the sealed bid, I think is gonna, it's gonna be okay. I mean, it's gonna be fine. It doesn't, one of the things that I don't know whether it's gonna be problematic or not, is, you know, people are used to electronic,
Yeah.
submitting things electronically, but you can't really submit a sealed bid electronically. So they're gonna have to, anybody that's interested is gonna have
Print it
to,
and put it in the envelope for them.
well, I mean, and is that why it's coming to me?
No,
I
Yes.
mean, you know what I mean, I don't know. That's something to consider. If you go, okay, yeah, if it's going to the.
I think they
office,
need to do it themselves and hand deliver it.
Need to be hand delivered, or if they put it in the mail, they're
Well,
risking, does the mail get here by
They run
5
a
o'clock
chance
Friday?
it's gonna get there at 5
That's
o'clock.
their choice.
But otherwise, it's gonna have to be a hand delivered. Bid.
We have a motion, a second on the table. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 5-2. Thank you very much. Can I keep going? You good?
Yep.
Power through it? Okay. So next item is policy update. This should be pretty clear cut. We did talk about it last month, presented it. Any questions from anybody?
I move to approve the policy update as presented.
Motion is second. No further questions. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. And next item is the forensics cooperative between Wakefield and CHS.
What brought this
Yeah.
to us?
It's patient guidelines. The same teacher is now teaching. They had to change teachers at Wakefield just because of schedule and certifications. It used to be Holly, and now it's Megan. And she's the sponsor for Clay Center. And so they will join together at their competitions, but when they get to regionals, they will split out, no different than.
It's just because it's the same teacher?
Correct,
So it's like we do for cross country.
correct. It was similar to.
So they still do their own activities in their own building.
Correct.
It's just when they go to competition, they're gonna jump in the same car together and go, because it's the same coach.
Yeah, and then once it gets to the placing level, like regional
Regionals and
and so
states.
forth, it'll be separate. Should they not, like, let's say a play center doesn't have a student qualifying, she'll go with Wakefield. If they both have students that qualify, we might have to have another sponsor go with, similar to how we handled regional and state cross country in the past. It's because it's Acacia,
So
Sponsored
what brought
event,
it to,
that's
what brought
why.
it to our attention that it was? the
because
same
it's
sponsor?
Acacia cooperative.
I understand that. So you had to, is there something with Keisha that you have to sign?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I'm asking.
Yeah, it's
But
because
since
it's
you have the
Acacia.
same code, since you have the same teacher, so she's teaching a class down there, second semester,
Right.
and she's teaching in Clay, and it's both second semester?
Typically
Yeah,
forensics is the
because
second
debate is-
semester.
Debate,
is
speech,
first-
speech is first
Debate is
semester.
first, debate's first semester.
So if that were to change, if a different teacher were to teach that class, it could be split off again.
Could be, but she's the only one certified correctly.
And I understand that, and that's, I just.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely should be.
So this doesn't say anything about teacher. It just says a cooperative agreement between the two schools. Doesn't say anything about having the same teacher.
Because you're joining two schools. So anytime you join two schools in an activity, you have to fill out this cooperative.
I understand that, but because we have the same teacher, it's not Acacia deal. It's because we're doing a cooperative agreement. It's Acacia deal.
Forensics is Acacia sponsored. It's like cross
like a
country, it's like
sport.
football. It falls under Acacia guidelines, forensics, debate.
And since they'll be traveling together in these activities, you have to have a cooperative so that.
It'll work the way cross country does and both groups make each other better. I loved it when.
The other option
Girls
is
were in high school.
you hire a different sponsor and you send a sponsor and sponsoring two separate vehicles to the same event. Now they're just jumping into a car together is all it's changing.
Handled by one.
And how many events have they gone together before? I mean, to the same event. I would think that they would be going to different events, not the same event, but.
Why did you?
Well, because Wakefield is a 1A high school and Clay Center is a 4A high school, and Clay Center probably goes to 4A events and 4A schools, and Wakefield goes to 1A events and 1A schools. And so the chances of going to the same event are pretty slim.
Well, wasn't the event this week at the state fair? That was just all classes, right?
Yeah,
It isn't
they go
divided.
to a lot of them there. When Zoe did it, they're like big, like all class. They don't, not all of them.
All
but-
sizes and.
But I know a lot of them are just these big things.
It's not specific to a category or.
And so you get to regionals and state.
I move to approve the cooperative forensics agreement between CCCHS and WHS as presented. Second. Motion and second. Any further questions? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries 5-2. Vehicle purchase is next item. So you'll take that one.
Mike has had it all intentions. We moved it to last to hopefully get him here, but he had a family member receive some health care today and couldn't peel away. And so, as you know, Mike's been, for lack of a better term, kind of unpacking the suitcase and working with staff and kind of looking at creative ways to efficient, make routes more efficient, get kids to and fro. And the one big category he's noticed is it's targeted has been, where can we free up routes or drivers that don't require CDL is a big deal, because you can pick up paras or aides or other staff that need to pick up a few more hours a week, and they can go and pick up some kids. And so his recommendation was to use the allocated amount. And I did realize, I think I had a typo in here. I think it's 120, not 130, so we can adjust that. But either way, it doesn't take us over or under, but he wanted to look at he asked me if he could look at the total amount that was budgeted for him towards the fleet. And if he could have some autonomy to make some recommendations to look at it a little bit differently. And, I think it's important that as he does these things, that we allow him an opportunity to do that. And he's kind of laid it out here in his report, and he's identified some further needs down the road. So he would make these purchases. If a transit van comes available, he would like to utilize some of this year's funds for another transit, and then carry over what he doesn't use to the following years and save up for more of a activity type bus, because it has something to do with air brakes. Air brake certification is again another level. And I think we only have 2 air brake certified drivers right now, and no one else wants to do that. And so as he looks down the road, it would be planning for more versatile buses that could go on activities that didn't require air brakes. And so he wants to kind of start building up those funds for future
For
years.
flexibility.
And then the replacements for these SUVs. It's written in the report. I don't know.
Yep.
You can read
What
it.
were the other two quotes, just out of curiosity?
They didn't spit one.
Oh. Easy.
So we had 170,000, you say total? 50 and 120? Set aside? 100, you say that 130 is 120,
Yes.
so 170? And
I
then we're
assume
gonna
we got
spend,
the 2 buses last month.
Well, that was from last year's. Remember, we didn't buy that
Right,
one
but did
bus.
we end up getting them?
Oh, yeah, they're here.
Okay.
They're in the fleet being used now.
so we're spending 100,000 of that 170, and it says we still have a remaining 130.
No,
No, that's what Mr. Nelson just explained, that he mistyped.
it's a 120, not 130. It's 120. and
No, down here at the bottom, we got 120 and 50 is 170, and we're gonna spend 100, and we're gonna have 130,000 left over,
This should actually be
70.
Yeah, there you go.
70K. In the recommendation, you're saying this leaves remaining allocation of approximately 70,000.
Right, not
There you go.
130.
There you go.
Yes, yes.
Well, actually,
After,
it'd be about 60,000, because that 130 probably is, because you're taking 10 off the top.
We'll correct it and get it.
120 plus 50 is 170.
Take 100 out,
Right.
so about 60,
So-
170, 70,000.
70,000. Yeah, okay. So we'd still have in the budget $70,000-ish. right
Because
about
don't we,
there.
I thought we were looking at a food service or a lift truck or something.
About that last
No,
year.
not food service, but a bus with a
Wheelchair.
lift.
Wheelchair.
He mentioned that somewhere. I
That's,
thought.
It was
yeah,
in.
that's next year.
Okay, okay.
And that's been in the deal for a while.
I would assume that this would be more fuel efficient than the buses too.
As long as they're not diesel.
And
Next
one of
number two
them
is-
is, it's replacing, I mean, it's almost completely rusted out. It's served its time. So,
Move to get final approval to purchase 2 new Ford Expedition 4x2 XL Max from Glaven Ford in the amount of $99,947.52.
Second. Motion second. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. I believe that takes us to